All right. So if you've been following my story, you know things have not exactly been normal. After the whole Mark incident, where I was stalked and terrorized, I swore off relationships. Then loneliness, that insidious little whisper, convinced me to try again. That led me to Chloe, the librarian with the people watching our YouTube channel, who turned my trauma into content. Yeah, real fun. After Chloe, I deleted every dating app, every social media account I could live without. I was done. Truly, irrevocably done. My hypervigilance was not just a coping mechanism anymore, it was a permanent fixture, a barbed wire fence around my mind. Every stranger was a potential threat. Every casual glance felt like an analysis. I was a wound that refused to heal, constantly picked at by the world. But here's the thing about humans, right? We are stupidly resilient, or maybe just stupidly hopeful. A few months passed. The silence in my apartment started to feel less like peace and more like a void. My friends, bless their hearts, kept trying to set me up, but the thought of a blind date made my stomach churn. I started seeing a therapist, trying to unpack all the layers of fear and distrust. She encouraged me to try to re-engage in small, safe ways, to not let fear win. And then, one particularly bleak Tuesday evening, after scrolling through endless happy couple photos on Instagram, which I know was a terrible idea, I found myself staring at the Tinder icon on my phone, re-downloaded in a moment of weakness. Just to look. I told myself, just to see, to prove I was not completely broken. I made a new profile, stripped bare of anything too personal. Generic photos, generic interests. My bio was something bland like loves coffee, books, and long walks. I was searching for the human equivalent of plain toast. Someone utterly, unequivocally boring. Someone who would not even register on a people-watching channel. And that is when I saw Liam. His profile was, well, it was exactly what I was looking for. He was a software engineer, which immediately checked the stable, probably spent a lot of time indoors box. His photos were well-lit, professional, but not overly curated. He had a nice smile, kind eyes. He was holding a cat in one picture, a hiking stick in another. He looked safe, normal, predictable. His bio mentioned he liked coding, craft beer, and obscure documentaries. Nothing screamed red flag. Nothing even whispered it. He was not overtly handsome, in that way that sometimes makes you suspicious. He was just pleasant. We matched. His first message was simple, hey, your profile caught my eye. Love the hiking pic. It was innocuous, normal. We exchanged a few messages, mostly about our jobs, weekend plans, the weather. He seemed genuinely interested, but not overly so. He asked thoughtful questions, and his responses were coherent and grammatically correct, which, honestly, is a high bar on dating apps these days. After a few days of messaging, he suggested coffee. There's a great little place downtown. Super chill, he wrote. No pressure, just a chat. That sounded perfect. Low stakes. Public. Easy escape. My therapist would be proud. I thought I was putting myself out there slowly, cautiously. The coffee shop was bustling, exactly as I liked it. I arrived a few minutes early, scanning the room, already feeling that familiar prickle of anxiety. When Liam walked in, he was exactly as he appeared in his photos, maybe a little taller. He had a friendly, slightly awkward smile. He spotted me, waved, and made his way over. Hey, you made it, he said, his voice a little deeper than I would imagine. Liam, great to finally meet you. Hi, Liam. I replied, forcing a smile. Good to meet you too. We ordered our coffees. He remembered I would mention liking oat milk lattes, which was a nice touch, showing he had paid attention. My initial assessment good. Normal. The conversation flowed pretty easily. He talked about his work, about a recent trip he took, about his cat. Mittens. I talked about my job, my general interests. I kept things light, vague, and carefully curated. I did not mention Mark or Chloe. I did not mention my therapy. I was a carefully constructed facade of normalcy. But as we talked, little things started to register, like faint echoes in a quiet room. He had a way of looking at me, not overtly staring, but his gaze felt intense, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. I would catch his eyes, and he would not immediately look away. It was not aggressive, just unwavering. I chalked it up to him being genuinely engaged, maybe a little shy. My paranoia, I told myself, was just on high alert. He asked about my neighborhood. You mentioned you live in the area, right? I used to live around there. It is really nice. It was a casual comment, but it sent a tiny shiver down my spine. I had not specified where in the area, just a general part of town. I dismissed it. It is a big area. He probably just meant the vibe. He also had a peculiar habit of mirroring my movements. If I leaned forward, he would subtly lean forward. If I crossed my legs, a moment later, his legs would cross. It was not obvious, not like a caricature, but it was there, just under the surface. It is a known psychological trick. I reminded myself to build rapport. He is probably just trying to be engaging. The date lasted about an hour and a half. It felt long, but not unpleasantly so. When we were wrapping up, he said, I had a really great time. I would love to do this again. Maybe dinner sometime. Yeah, that sounds nice. I said, my voice perhaps a little too enthusiastic in my relief that the date was ending. I needed to decompress, to process the subtle oddities. He walked me to my car. Text me when you get home safe, he said, with that same intense gaze. I worry about you driving alone at night. It was a sweet sentiment, but it felt a little much for a first date. I will. I promise, and quickly got into my car. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I saw him still standing there, watching my car disappear down the street. A flicker of unease, quickly suppressed. He is just being polite. I told myself, a gentleman. I drove home, trying to shake off the weird feeling. My apartment felt like a sanctuary. I locked the door, double-checked it, and then went to the kitchen to make myself some tea. My phone buzzed. It was Liam. Home safe. Yep, just got in. Thanks for a nice time. I texted back, try and keep it light. Good. Sweet dreams. He replied almost instantly. I put my phone down, a knot tightening in my stomach. The speed of his response. The sweet dreams had felt a little too intimate, too fast. But I was trying to be open, trying not to let my past experiences taint every new encounter. Maybe he was just an old-fashioned romantic. Maybe I was just hyper-paranoid. The next day, he texted again. Hey, thinking about you. Hope you have a great day. And then a few hours later, just saw a cat that reminded me of Mittens, made me smile. How's your day going? It was a lot of contact for someone I would only met once. I responded politely, but kept my replies brief. I felt a growing sense of discomfort. It was not aggressive, but it was relentless. It felt like he was trying to weave himself into the fabric of my day, even though we barely knew each other. He suggested dinner for our second date. I agreed, trying to push past my growing apprehension. Maybe he just really liked me. Maybe I was overthinking everything. The dinner date was at a moderately upscale Italian place. Again, public, well-lit. Liam was charming, attentive. He ordered for me, saying, I remember you mentioned you liked pasta, and this place has the best carbonara. I had not mentioned pasta or carbonara. I had mentioned I liked Italian food generally, but not a specific dish. Oh, really? I said, trying to sound casual. How did you know that? He gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. Just a good guess. I suppose. I am pretty good at reading people. My heart gave a little lurch. Reading people. Chloe, had been reading people too, had not she? I forced myself to breathe. No, this was different. He was not recording me. He was just trying to impress me. Throughout dinner, his comments became more specific. He asked if I still went to the gym near the grocery store on Elm Street. I had never mentioned that gym. I did go there, but I would never told him. How did you know about that gym? I asked, my voice a little tighter than I intended. He chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. Oh, I must have heard you mention it sometime. Or maybe I saw you there. It is a popular spot. I knew for a fact I had not mentioned it, and I was certain I would never seen him there. My gym clothes are usually a hat, an oversized hoodie. I make an effort to be inconspicuous. My appetite vanished. I picked at my carbonara, my mind racing. This was not normal. This was not just enthusiasm. This was too much. He was too observant, too knowledgeable about details I had not shared. I actually need to head out soon. I said, cutting him off mid-sentence. Early start tomorrow. His smile faltered slightly. Already, we just got the main course. Yeah, sorry. It has been a long day. I tried to sound apologetic, but inside, a full-blown alarm was blaring. He paid the bill, still smiling, but there was a new edge to his gaze, something I could not quite place. He insisted on walking me to my car, which was parked a few blocks away. I tried to protest, but he was insistent. It is dark. I want to make sure you get there safely. As we walked, he kept talking, his voice a low murmur beside me. You know, he said, I really feel like we have a connection. A deep one. I feel like I know you, almost better than you know yourself. My blood ran cold. Better than you know yourself. That was the exact kind of manipulative garbage Mark used to say. And Chloe had claimed to understand my trauma, responses better than I did. I think we are still getting to know each other. Liam, I said, try and keep my voice steady. It takes time. He just smiled. For some people, maybe, but for us, I did not think so. I feel like I have known you forever. We reached my car. I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking slightly. Thanks for dinner. Liam, I said, trying to end it quickly. He leaned in, his face close to mine. His eyes, in the dim street light, seemed to glint. I will see you soon, he whispered, then pressed a soft, lingering kiss to my cheek. I recoiled slightly, muttered a quick goodbye, and practically dove into my car. I locked the doors, my heart hammering against my ribs. I started the engine, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. I glanced in my rear-view mirror. Liam was standing there, under the street lamp, watching me. He did not wave. He did not move. He just stood there, a dark silhouette against the glow of the city, watching. I sped out of there, my mind a chaotic mess of fear and confusion. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that something was deeply wrong. He knew too much. He was too intense. That I will see you soon was not a casual goodbye, it felt like a promise. A threat. I drove home, taking a convoluted route, checking my mirrors constantly. I did not see anyone following me. The streets were mostly empty. The relief, when I finally pulled into my driveway, was immense. My apartment building is a small, older complex. I live on the ground floor, which I usually love because it means no stairs. But suddenly, the thought of having ground-level windows felt like a vulnerability. I practically sprinted from my car to my front door, fumbling with my keys, my heart still pounding. The porch light flickered on as I approached, casting long, dancing shadows. I shoved the key into the lock, turned it, and burst inside, slamming the door shut behind me. I leaned against it, breathing heavily, my eyes darting around familiar comfort of my living room. Safe. I was safe. I triple-checked the locks, including the deadbolt and the chain. Then I went to each window, ensuring they were all securely latched, pulling the blinds down tight. My hands were still trembling. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a fight-or-flight response that refused to subside. I tried to rationalize it. He was just a little intense, a little socially awkward. Maybe he probably just really liked me. My past trauma was making me overreact. That is what my therapist would say, right? Do not let fear win. But the details gnawed at me. The gym, the pasta, the knowing me better than I know myself. The way he just stood there, watching me leave. I walked into my kitchen, needing a glass of water to calm my nerves. The kitchen window looks out onto a small patch of grass and a low shrub, beyond which is a parking lot. It is usually a peaceful view. I poured myself a glass of water, my hands still shaking slightly. I took a deep, shaky breath, trying to calm my racing thoughts. I walked over to the kitchen counter, my back to the window. I felt exposed, even with the blinds down. It was an irrational feeling, but I could not shake it. I turned to face the window, my eyes drawn to the small gap, where the blinds did not quite meet at the bottom. Just a tiny sliver of darkness visible outside. I told myself to ignore it, to go to bed, to try and forget about Liam. But I could not. Something compelled me to look closer, to press my eye to the gap. And that is when I saw him. He was standing there, in the narrow strip of grass just outside my kitchen window. Not in the parking lot, not near my car. Right there, less than 10 feet from my window. Liam. He was just standing there, perfectly still, facing my apartment. His hands were in his pockets. His head was slightly tilted, as if listening. My heart did not just pound, it seized. It felt like a giant, icy hand had clamped around it, squeezing every ounce of blood from my veins. The air rushed out of my lungs in a silent gasp. He was not moving. He was not doing anything overtly threatening. He was just there. And then, slowly his head turned. His eyes, even in the dim light filtering from the street lamps, seemed to pierce through the blinds, through the glass, straight into mine. It felt like he knew I was looking, like he had been waiting for me to look. A slow, deliberate smile spread across his face. It was not the friendly, slightly awkward smile from our first date. It was wide, utterly devoid of warmth, and utterly terrifying. It was a smile of a predator who had found its prey. He raised a hand, slowly, deliberately, not to wave, but to tap the window. Just once. A soft tap. The sound, though muffled by the glass, resonated through my entire body, vibrating to the floorboards through my bones. It was a declaration. An announcement. I am here. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet, scrambling away from the window like a cornered animal. I fell to the floor, my knees hitting the linoleum with a sickening thud. I crawled, blindly, instinctively, away from the window, away from him. My breath hitched in my throat. Tears sprang to my eyes, hot and stinging. It was happening again. The invasion, the violation, the terror of being watched, studied, hunted. I scrambled on my hands and knees to the living room, fumbling for my phone. My fingers were numb, clumsy. I dialed 911, my voice a ragged whisper when the dispatcher finally answered. Someone's outside my window. I choked out, tried to keep my voice steady, try and sound coherent. He was my Tinder date. He is just standing there. The dispatcher was calm, professional. Madam, can you describe him? Is he trying to get in? No, I whispered, my eyes darting towards the kitchen, expecting to see his face pressed against the glass. He is just watching. He tapped the window. She asked for my address. I rattled it off, my voice trembling. Did he follow you home? I do not know. I sobbed. I took a long way. I thought I was safe. Stay on the line, madam. Do you have any weapons? Anything you can defend yourself with? I looked around my apartment. suddenly seeing it as a flimsy shell, not a sanctuary. A kitchen knife, a heavy book. What would that do against someone who had just stood outside my window, smiling, knowing I was there? No, I whispered, just get here. I stayed on the line, huddled on the floor behind my sofa, my ears straining, listening for any sound from outside. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind outside sent a fresh wave of panic through me. Was he still there? Was he trying the door? Was he just waiting? The minutes stretched into an eternity. I could hear the dispatcher's calm voice, a lifeline in the darkness, but my mind was a whirlwind of terror. Mark, Chloe, and now Liam. It was a relentless cycle. Finally, I heard sirens in the distance, growing louder, closer. My heart leaped with a desperate hope. I crawled to the front door, peeking through the peephole. 2 police cars pulled up, their lights flashing, painting my quiet street in alternating hues of red and blue. I unlocked the door, my hands still shaking, and let the officers in. They were kind, their faces grim as I recounted the story, pointing toward the kitchen window. They checked outside. They searched the perimeter of the building. They found nothing. "There's no one here, madam," one of them said gently, shining his flashlight into the shrubbery. "Are you sure you saw him?" "Yes," I cried, my voice cracking. "I saw him. He was standing right there. He smiled at me. He tapped the window." They took my statement. Liam's name, his profile picture from Tinder, which I had thankfully not deleted yet. They promised to look into it, to contact him, to issue a warning. But there was nothing concrete. No proof he had done anything illegal, technically. Just standing, just watching. They left, leaving me alone in my apartment, which now felt colder, emptier, and infinitely more terrifying than before. I did not sleep that night. I sat on my sofa, a kitchen knife clutched in my hand, staring at the kitchen window, at the gap in the blinds, at the darkness beyond. The next morning, I called my work and told them I would not be in. I called my landlord, explaining I needed to move. I did not care about my lease. I could not stay there. Not after that. I blocked Liam on every platform, deleted Tinder again, this time for good. I changed my number. I started looking for apartments in a completely different part of the city, preferably on an upper floor with a secured entry. The police did contact Liam. He denied everything, claimed he had just been driving by after dropping a friend off, saw my car, and thought about saying hello, but decided against it. He said he never got out of his car, never approached my window, said I was clearly mistaken or overreacting. They could not prove anything, and that is the insidious horror of it. He was technically innocent, but I knew what I saw. I knew the smile. I knew the talk. I moved a week later. I installed a security camera system in my new place. I stopped going out alone at night. Every shadow, every unexpected sound sends a jolt of fear through me. My hypervigilance is not just permanent now, it is a cage. A cage built by Mark, reinforced by Chloe, and slammed shut by Liam. I still sometimes catch myself glancing out my windows, especially at night, and sometimes in the deepest, darkest hours. I swear I can see a faint reflection, a shadow of a smile just beyond the glass, waiting, always waiting. And I know with chilling certainty that I will never truly be safe again. Not really, because some people do not need to break in to invade your life. They just need to stand outside your window and smile. All right, everyone. You know that feeling, right? That quiet desperation that creeps up on you after a particularly brutal breakup. That moment when you are utterly sick of being alone, yet utterly terrified of putting yourself out there again. You've been burned, maybe more than once, and the scars are still pretty raw. You tell yourself you are done with dating, done with the apps, done with the whole exhausting, emotionally draining circus. But then the loneliness just wins. It chips away at your resolve day by day until one night, probably after a particularly sad microwave meal and a binge watch of something utterly devoid of human connection, you find yourself doing it. You re-download the app. Yeah, that was me. My name's Alex. And let me tell you, after everything I had been through, the manipulative ex, the ghosting, the general parade of weirdos, I was done. But my therapist, bless her persistent heart, kept telling me I needed to try again, to face my fears, to find some semblance of normal. And honestly, I was tired of talking to my cat about my problems. So, I re-downloaded Tinder, not with any grand hopes. Mind you, just to see. To dip a toe back into the murky, shark-infested waters of modern romance. My strategy was simple bland. I wanted bland, safe, predictable. Someone who would not set off a single one of my newly calibrated, hypersensitive alarm bells. I just want a quiet coffee, a polite conversation, and maybe, just maybe, a tiny flicker of hope that not everyone out there was a walking red flag. I swiped for a few days, mostly left, occasionally right on someone whose profile promised nothing more exciting than a love for hiking and craft beer. And then, I matched with Serena. Her profile was normal, almost too normal in retrospect. Pretty, but not in a way that screamed supermodel. Her bio was short, witty, talk about her job in marketing, her love for indie movies, and how she was looking for someone genuine. Standard stuff. Nothing jumped out. No weird philosophical ramblings. No shirtless gym selfies. No vague threats about her exes. Just Serena. She seemed like exactly what I was looking for. Safe. We started chatting, and for the first few days, it was exactly what I expected. Polite, engaging, a little flirty, but nothing too intense. We talk about our favorite movies, our jobs, what we like to do on weekends. She seemed smart, articulate, and had a good sense of humor. I started to think, hey, maybe this is not so bad. Maybe I actually can do this again. But then, things started to shift. Slowly at first, almost imperceptibly, like a current in the ocean that subtly changes direction, pulling you off course without you even realizing it until you are miles from where you started. Her questions started to get a little too specific. Not about me personally, not yet, but about broader things. She would ask, do you live in an apartment or a house? I would answer, oh, an apartment. Then she would follow up with, oh, nice. Is it one of those big complexes or more of a smaller building? And I would think, that is a bit of a weird question for someone I just matched with. But I would rationalize it. Maybe she is looking for a new place. Maybe she is just curious about real estate. I told her it was a smaller building, not a huge complex. Then came questions about my work. Do you work from home? Or do you commute? I told her I commuted to an office downtown. Oh, interesting, she messaged back. Do you drive or take public transport? Again, a little odd, but I figured she was just trying to get a feel for my daily life. I told her I drove. Must be a pain with parking down there. She would reply, do you have assigned parking at your building? Or do you have to hunt for a spot? See, each question, on its own, seemed innocuous enough. Like she was just trying to paint a picture of my life. But strung together, they started to form a pattern. A picture that was less about getting to know me as a person, and more about mapping out my logistics, my routines, my vulnerabilities. I remember one conversation particularly clearly. We were talking about personal safety in a general sense. She brought it up, saying something like, it is crazy how much you have to think about safety these days, is not it? Especially for women. And I agreed, of course. Then she said, I always wonder, with people who live alone, how do they manage their home security? Do you have an alarm system, or do you just rely on locks? Now, that one made me pause. I typed out a reply, then deleted it. Typed another, deleted it. Finally, I just said something vague like, oh, the usual. Good locks, trying to be aware. I did not want to tell her I lived alone, or whether I had an alarm system. It felt too personal, too exposed. Even though, technically, she had not asked if I lived alone. She just implied it. My internal alarm bells, the ones that had been silenced for a while, started to hum. Not ringing yet, just a low, unsettling hum. I told myself I was being paranoid. After Mark, after Chloe, I was probably just overthinking everything. She was probably just a naturally curious person. Or maybe she was just making conversation, and I was reading too much into it. That is what I told myself, anyway. But then, the questions took a much darker turn. We were messaging back and forth one evening, talking about a hypothetical scenario from a true crime podcast she would mentioned. The podcast was about a home invasion. And in the middle of our discussion about the victims, she suddenly typed, "It always makes me wonder, how easy do you think it would be to just take someone, if you really wanted to, especially someone who lives alone and has a predictable routine." My blood ran cold. The humming of the alarm bells suddenly became a piercing, deafening screech. I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, trying to formulate a reply. Take someone. What did that even mean? Kidnap? Abduct? It felt like a direct, chilling question, even if framed hypothetically. I tried to play it cool. I typed back, I guess it depends on the person and the situation. Why do you ask? I tried to make it sound casual, like I was just curious about her morbid fascination. Her reply came almost instantly, just thinking about how vulnerable we all are, especially people like you. You seem like the type who is very trusting, very routine-oriented. You probably leave your windows open sometimes. Do not you? Or forget to lock your door when you just run out for a second. My heart was pounding now. This was not a hypothetical anymore. This felt personal. People like me. How would she know I was trusting or routine-oriented from a few days of messaging? And the specific mention of windows and doors that felt like she was probing for weaknesses. I typed back, "Whoa, that is a bit of a dark turn. Serena, are you okay?" She replied with a laughing emoji. Haha, sorry. Just my dark sense of humor. I guess. I just find it fascinating, human psychology. The things people assume are safe, but actually are not. Like, you leave your car in the same spot every day. Do not you? What if someone was watching that? A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. My car, I did park in the same spot every day at my apartment complex. It was an assigned spot, but still, how would she know that? Had I mentioned it? I scrolled back through our conversation. No, I had not. We talked about parking downtown, but not my home parking. Serena, I messaged, trying to keep my voice even though my fingers were shaking. That is a really strange line of questioning. I am not really comfortable talking about this anymore. Her reply was swift. Oh, come on. Alex, do not be so sensitive. It is just a thought experiment. But seriously, how hard do you think it would be to, just make someone disappear? If they did not have anyone really looking out for them, and they lived alone, and they did not have an alarm system. That was it. The line was crossed. This was not a dark sense of humor. This was something else entirely. This was predatory. This was planning. I did not reply. I just stared at the screen, a primal fear seizing me. I blocked her, instantly. On Tinder, on my phone, everywhere I could think of. I deleted the app. My hands were shaking so hard, I almost dropped my phone. I stood up and walked to my window. I peered through the blinds, my heart hammering against my ribs. The street below was dark and quiet. Just a few parked cars, the streetlights casting long shadows. No one was there. I told myself I was overreacting. She was just a weirdo, a troll, someone with a twisted sense of humor. I blocked her. It was over. She could not hurt me. But the words echoed in my mind. What if someone was watching that? Make someone disappear. People like you. I spent the rest of the night triple checking my locks, pulling down all the blinds, and jumping at every creak and groan of my old apartment building. Sleep did not come easily. Every shadow seemed to stretch into something menacing. Every distant car engine sounded like it was slowing down outside my building. The next morning, I tried to brush it off, get back to normal. I went to work, tried to focus, but her words kept replaying in my head. I found myself looking around more often, scanning faces in the subway, checking my rear view mirror constantly. Paranoia had set in deep and insidious. That afternoon, I got an email from an address I did not recognize. The subject line was simply "still thinking about you." My stomach dropped. I almost did not open it, but a morbid curiosity, mixed with sheer terror, compelled me. I clicked. The email was short. No salutation. Just a single sentence: "You should not have blocked me. Alex, now it is not a game anymore." And attached was a photo of my apartment building, taken from across the street. And in the corner of the photo, barely visible, was my car, parked in my assigned spot. The photo was clearly recent, taken in daylight, probably that very morning. I gasped, my breath hitched in my throat. She knew where I lived, not just my general neighborhood, but my actual building, my car. She had been watching me. The hypothetical questions, the dark humor, it was all a terrifying prelude. I immediately called the police. I explained everything, my voice trembling. The officer on the phone was polite, but a little dismissive. "Sir, you blocked her. She sent one email with a photo of a public street. There's no direct threat of violence. We can file a report, but there is not much we can do right now." But she asked about kidnapping. I pleaded. "She knows where I live. She is watching me. We understand your concern." "Sir," he said, his voice flat, but without a direct, credible threat or any physical harm, "our hands are tied. Just try to avoid contact. Do not respond to her emails. Block her again if she tries to reach out." I hung up, feeling completely helpless and utterly exposed. The police could not help me. I was on my own. That night, I did not go home. I could not. The thought of walking into that apartment, knowing she knew exactly where it was, knowing she might be watching, was unbearable. I called a friend, Mark, and asked if I could crash on his couch, making up some excuse about my pipes bursting. He was cool about it, did not ask too many questions. But even at Mark's place, I could not relax. Every shadow, every sound. I was on edge. I kept checking my phone, even though I knew I should not. No more emails. No more messages. Just silence. And the silence was almost worse. It was a silence of a predator stalking its prey, waiting for the right moment. The next day, I called my landlord. I told him I needed to break my lease. He was understanding, given my history of anxiety, but it was still a hassle. I started looking for a new apartment, far away, in a completely different part of the city. I knew it would not be easy, but I had to get out. I had to disappear before she made me disappear. I went back to my apartment with Mark to pack a few essentials. I felt safer with him, there, as we walked into the building. I noticed a small, folded piece of paper tucked into the handle of my apartment door. My heart leaped into my throat. I froze. "Do not touch it," Mark said, seeing the look on my face. He knew something was wrong. I would told him about Serena the night before, how she would have been asking weird questions. I had not gone into the full depth of the kidnapping questions, but he knew I was scared. Mark, being a good friend, carefully used a pen to retrieve the note. He unfolded it. It was a printed photo. A photo of me, sitting at my desk, looking at my computer from the night before in Mark's apartment, and scrawled across the bottom, in neat, precise handwriting, were the words you can run. Alex, but you can't hide. I know where you are. And I know your friend is named Mark. You should have just answered my questions. My legs gave out. I sank to the floor, shaking uncontrollably. She had followed me. She knew about Mark. She had been outside his apartment. She knew everything. This was not just some random weirdo. This was someone meticulous, someone patient, someone truly, terrifyingly dedicated. Mark was furious. He immediately called the police again, this time with a new evidence. A photo of me in a private residence, taken without my knowledge or consent, with a threatening note. This was different. This was stalking. This time, they took it seriously. They sent an officer to take our statements. They started an investigation. They told me to go stay with family, far away, until they could figure something out. I packed a bag, feeling like a refugee in my own life. My normal, bland life, which I had so desperately craved, had been shattered. I felt like I was living in a horror movie, and I was a protagonist who always makes the dumb choices. For the next few weeks, I stayed with my sister hundreds of miles away. I changed my phone number, deleted all my social media accounts, even changed my email address. I became a ghost online. The police kept me updated. They found no trace of Serena. Her Tinder profile was gone. Her email address was a burner. It was like she had vanished into thin air. But the fear did not vanish. It became a part of me. Every time I heard a strange noise, every time I saw a car that looked remotely familiar, my heart would pound. I would scan crowds, looking for her face. I would check my locks 3 times, even when I was staying at my sister's house. I would stand by the window, peering out into the darkness, wondering if she was out there, watching, waiting. The police eventually closed the case, unable to find her. They told me to be vigilant, to report anything suspicious, but that without a physical sighting or more concrete evidence, there was not much else they could do. I eventually moved into a new apartment, in a new city, under a new name. I know it sounds extreme, like something out of a spy novel, but the terror she instilled in me was so profound, so absolute, that I felt I had no other choice. I changed my job, my whole life. I cut off contact with almost everyone I knew, except for a very select few who knew my new identity. I still have nightmares. Nightmares where I am trapped and she is there, asking those questions, her face twisted into that chilling, knowing smile. Nightmares where I wake up to find a note on my pillow or a photo of me, sleeping. I have not been on a dating app since. I do not think I ever will be again. How can I trust anyone online when one seemingly normal match can turn into a living nightmare? You know, the scariest part about it all was not the direct threats. It was the methodical nature of her questions. The way she built a profile of my life, piece by piece, like she was assembling a puzzle of my vulnerability. The way she knew my routines, my habits, my apartment, my car, my friends. It was a feeling that someone, a complete stranger, knew me better than I knew myself, and she was using that knowledge to plan something truly horrific. So, if you're out there, scrolling through those apps, looking for connection, just remember my story. Remember Alex, who just wanted something bland, something safe. And remember Serena, who just wanted to know how easily she could make him disappear. Because you never truly know who is on the other side of that screen. And sometimes, the questions they ask are not just conversation starters. Sometimes they are part of a plan. And sometimes those plans are darker than anything you could possibly imagine. Sleep tight, everyone. All right, guys, listen up. I gotta tell you something that still keeps me up at night. It has been a while now, but some scars just do not fade. You know that feeling when you are trying to move on, trying to put yourself back out there, but every fiber of your being is screaming at you to just stay home. That was me. After a string of absolute dumpster fire relationships, I was sworn off dating apps. Tinder, Bumble, whatever, they were all just cesspools of heartbreak and disappointment. But, you know, loneliness is a sneaky bastard. It creeps up on you, whispers in your ear, tells you are being ridiculous. So, reluctantly, I caved. I re-downloaded Tinder. My profile was bland. My expectations lower than the Mariana Trench. I just wanted a quiet coffee. Maybe some polite conversation. Anything but another nightmare. And then I matched with Serena. Her profile was normal. Almost too normal. Pretty, but not in an intimidating way. Smiling, but not overly enthusiastic. Her bio was short, sweet, talked about hiking and reading. Standard stuff. Exactly what I was looking for. Our initial chats were polite, engaging. She seemed intelligent, funny, and for a fleeting moment, I actually thought, hey, maybe this won't be so bad after all. But then the questions started. Not all at once, not overtly creepy. It was subtle, like a slow, almost imperceptible turn of a screw. First, it was about my neighborhood. Oh, that is a nice area. Are the apartments, they're pretty spacious. Then, about my commute. Wow, that is a long drive. Do you usually take the highway or the back roads? Innocent enough, right? But they kept coming. About my apartment building. Is it one of those places with a doorman or more like a walk-up? About my home security. Do you ever worry about break-ins? I heard that area can be a bit dicey. My internal alarm bells, which had been dormant for a while, started to hum. A low, unsettling thrum beneath my skin. I tried to deflect, to change the subject, but she would circle back, always with that polite, almost innocent tone. Like she was just curious, just making conversation. But the hum grew louder. The hum turned into a screech when she asked me, point blank, if I lived alone. And then, without missing a beat, she followed up with, do you have one of those smart locks, or is it just a regular deadbolt? That was it. I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. This was not curiosity. This was reconnaissance. I told her I had to go, something about an urgent work call, and tried to end the conversation. But she was persistent. Oh, no worries. Alex, but before you go, when's a good day for us to grab that coffee? I am free Tuesday evening, or maybe Thursday morning before work. She would already assumed we were meeting. She would already pick the times. I felt trapped. I mumbled something about checking my schedule and signed off, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I knew, deep down, I should have just unmatched her right then and there. Blocked her. Deleted the app again. But part of me, the part that was still desperate for a normal connection, the part that was scared of being rude, hesitated. And that hesitation nearly cost me everything. A day later, she messaged again. Hey, Alex. Still thinking about that coffee. How about Tuesday at 7 p.m. at that cute little place on Elm Street? I already made a reservation. Just us. A reservation. Just us. I had not even agreed. This was next level. My gut was screaming, but my brain, still trying to rationalize, told me, it is just coffee. Alex, in a public place. What is the worst that can happen? Famous last words, right? Always the famous last words. I agreed, and that was my first mistake. The date itself was unsettling. Serena was there when I arrived, already at a table, nursing a latte. She looked exactly like her pictures, but there was something in her eyes, a kind of intensity, that the photos did not capture. She smiled, but it did not quite reach her eyes. It was more of a baring of teeth. She talked a lot, mostly about herself, but her gaze rarely left me. It felt less like a conversation and more like an interrogation. She asked about my family, my friends, my plans for the future, and not in a getting to know you way. It was deeper, More probing. When I mentioned I had a sister, she immediately asked for her name, where she lived, what she did. I gave vague answers, my discomfort growing by the second. At one point, I excused myself to the restroom. When I came back, my coffee cup, which I would only take a few sips from, was empty. Serena smiled. "Oh, you look like you needed a refill. So I asked the waitress to bring you another. Hope you do not mind." I did mind. I minded a lot. But I just forced a smile and thanked her. The new coffee tasted normal. Maybe a little too sweet. But I was paranoid now. Every sip felt like I was playing Russian roulette. I barely touched it. I tried to cut the date short, citing another early morning for work. Serena's smile faltered, just for a second, a flicker of something dark in her eyes, before she recovered. "Oh, that is a shame. I was really enjoying myself." "Well, let me walk you to your car, at least." I declined politely but firmly. I just wanted to get away from her. But as I reached my car, fumbling for my keys, I realized something was wrong. My car would not start. The engine just groaned, a pathetic, dying sound. I tried again and again. Nothing. Oh no. Serena's voice was suddenly right beside me, making me jump. I had not even heard her approach. "Looks like you are having trouble. You know what? It is late, and you look exhausted. Let me give you a ride home. It is the least I can do." My heart sank. My gut was screaming, a full-blown siren now. But it was late, my car was dead, and I was stranded. Public transport was a nightmare from this part of town, and a taxi would take ages. And Serena was standing right there, looking helpful. Too helpful. I hesitated, my mind racing through options. None of them seemed good. It is really no trouble. "Alex, my car is just around the corner." She gestured toward a sleek, dark sedan that I had not noticed before. It looked expensive, out of place for a coffee shop parking lot. Against every instinct, against every warning bell blaring in my head, I agreed. I was tired. I was vulnerable. I just wanted to be home, safe behind my deadbolt. I told myself I would just get in, give her my address, and get out. Simple. Her car smelled faintly of something sweet, like vanilla mixed with something metallic. She offered me a bottle of water. "Long day, huh? You look a little pale." I took a sip, grateful for the hydration. It tasted fine. Clean. I felt a tiny bit of my paranoia ease. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe she really was just trying to be nice. That was the last coherent thought I had. The next thing I remember, it was cold. Bone-chilling, damp cold. I was lying on something hard and uneven, the smell of pine needles and wet earth filling my nostrils. My head throbbed, a dull, insistent ache behind my eyes. I tried to open them, but the darkness was absolute, thick and heavy, like a blanket thrown over my face. Panic, cold and sharp, lanced through me. Where was I? What happened? I forced my eyes open. The darkness was not absolute, not entirely. Above me, through a canopy of bare branches, I could see slivers of a bruised, indigo sky, dotted with distant, indifferent stars. The air was frigid, biting at my exposed skin. I was wearing my clothes from the date, a light jacket, jeans, sneakers, but they felt thin, inadequate. My jacket was ripped at the sleeve, and there was a strange, earthy smell clinging to everything. I pushed myself up, groaning as a wave of dizziness washed over me. My entire body ached, especially my back and shoulders, as if I had been thrown. I was in a forest, a dense, unforgiving forest. Towering, skeletal trees reached up to the sky, their branches gnarled and claw-like. The ground beneath me was a tangled mess of roots, fallen leaves, and damp soil. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. Serena, the ride, the water bottle, my phone. I patted my pockets frantically. Nothing. My keys. Gone. My wallet. Also gone. I was miles from anywhere familiar. Miles from town. I knew it in my bones. The silence was too profound, broken only by the rustle of leaves and a phantom breeze and the distant, mournful hoot of an owl. There was no hum of traffic, no city lights, no distant sirens. Just the overwhelming, suffocating presence of the wilderness. I tried to call out, but my voice was a reedy whisper, raw and unused. Hello, is anyone there? Only the echo of my own fear answered. I stood up, my legs wobbly, my head spinning. Every movement sent a jolt of pain through my temples. I stumbled forward, trying to find some kind of path, some indication of where I was. But there was nothing, just trees, stretching into an endless, terrifying labyrinth. The woods felt ancient, primordial. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. Every shadow seemed to writhe. Every rustle of leaves sounded like footsteps. I felt an undeniable, primal dread, the feeling of being utterly, completely alone and utterly, completely vulnerable. I walked for what felt like hours, though I had no way of telling time. The sky remained a dark, star-speckled canvas. My only guide was a vague sense of downhill, hoping it would lead me to a road, a river, anything. My sneakers slipped on wet leaves. My jeans snagged on thorns, and branches whipped at my face. I could feel scratches forming on my skin, small rivulets of blood trickling down my arms. The dizziness would not subside. My mouth was dry, my throat raw. I was thirsty, so thirsty, and terrified. Every snap of a twig, every distant animal call, sent a fresh jolt of adrenaline through me. I kept imagining Serena's face, her unsettling smile, her intense eyes. Was she out here? Was she watching me? Then I saw it, hanging from a low branch of an ancient oak tree, swaying gently in the unseen breeze. It was small, crude, and utterly horrifying. A figure made of twigs and dried leaves, bound together with twine, with two small, dark stones for eyes. It looked like a miniature, macabre doll, a voodoo doll. My blood ran cold. This was not just a random dumping. This was something else. Something ritualistic. Something personal. As I stared at the effigy, a sickening realization washed over me. Around its neck, tied with a thin piece of thread, was a small, silver charm. The charm my grandmother had given me. The one I always wore on my necklace. The one I had been wearing when I got into Serena's car. It was gone from my neck now. My stomach lurched. She had not just abducted me. She had taken something from me, something deeply personal, and used it in this dark display. It was a message, a warning, or maybe a claim. The hum of fear in my ears turned into a high-pitched whine. I was not just lost. I was hunted. I tore my gaze away from the effigy, my mind screaming. I had to get out. I ran blindly, fueled by pure, unadulterated terror. My legs burned, my lungs ached, but I could not stop. I ran until my vision blurred, until the trees became a dizzying green-black tunnel. I stumbled, falling hard, my shoulders slamming against a gnarled root. A sharp pain shot through me, and I cried out, a strangled sob escaping my lips. I lay there for a moment, gasping, trying to regain my breath, my mind reeling. And that is when I heard it. Not the wind, not an animal. Footsteps, soft, deliberate, crunching through the leaves somewhere behind me. My breath hitched. I froze. Every muscle in my body tensed, listening. The footsteps paused. Then they started again, closer this time. Slow, methodical, like someone was enjoying the hunt. I scrambled up, ignoring the throbbing pain in my shoulder. I had to move. I had to hide. I plunged deeper into the undergrowth, pushing through thorny bushes, tearing my clothes, not caring. I could hear my own ragged breathing, loud in the suffocating silence of the forest. The footsteps sped up, Panic gave me a burst of adrenaline. I ran faster, weaving through trees, trying to make myself an impossible target. I could hear rustling behind me now, closer than before. I did not dare look back. Then a voice, a low, sing-song voice, cutting through the silence. Alex, where are you? Alex, come out, wherever you are. It was Serena. Her voice, so sweet and innocent on the phone, was now dripping with a chilling, playful malice. It was the sound of a predator toying with its prey. I bit back a scream. She was here. She had been here all along. She had not just left me. She was actively hunting me. I pushed myself harder, my lungs burning, a stitch in my side. I could hear her laughter now, a low, guttural sound that sent shivers down my spine. She was enjoying this. This was not just an abduction, it was a game. A sick, twisted game. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing behind a thick cluster of bushes, gasping for air. I pressed myself against the damp earth, trying to make myself as small as possible, trying to disappear. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. I could hear her moving, closer, her voice still calling out my name, but now laced with dangerous edge. Alex, do not make this harder than it has to be. I just want to talk. I knew what kind of talk she meant. I knew with absolute certainty that if she found me, I would not be leaving these woods alive. I stayed absolutely still, barely breathing, trying to calm the frantic thumping of my heart. I could hear her footsteps moving around, circling. She was close, too close. I could almost feel her presence, a cold, malevolent energy in the darkness. Then a beam of light cut through the trees, sweeping across the forest floor. A flashlight. It passed right over my hiding spot, illuminating the leaves just inches from my face. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying she would not see me, praying the darkness would swallow me whole. The light lingered for a moment, then moved on. Her footsteps receded slightly, her voice fading. She was still searching, but she had not found me. Not yet. I waited motionless for what felt like an eternity. Slowly, cautiously, I opened my eyes. The flashlight beam was further away now, a distant, dancing speck in the darkness. This was my chance. I crawled out from behind the bushes, my body screaming in protest. I had to find shelter. I had to find a way out. I started moving again, not running, but a fast, desperate walk, trying to put as much distance between myself and Serena as possible. The woods seemed to stretch on forever. My hope dwindled with every step. My mind conjured images of what she might do to me, fueled by the effigy and the chilling sound of her voice. I was losing strength, losing hope. Then, through a break in the trees, I saw it, a faint, flickering light. Not a flashlight, a steady, warm glow, a cabin. My heart leaped. Salvation, or another trap. My instincts screamed trap, but my exhaustion and desperation overruled them. I had to investigate. It was my only chance. I approached cautiously, moving through the trees like a ghost. The cabin was small, dilapidated, barely more than a shack. Its windows were boarded up, but a sliver of light escaped through a crack in one of the wooden planks. The air around it was heavy with a strange, cloying smell like stale blood, old wood, and something vaguely floral, like cheap perfume trying to mask something foul. My stomach churned. This was not a cozy cabin. This was a place of dread. I crept closer, pressing myself against the rough bark of a tree. Through the crack in the boarded window, I could see inside. The single room was sparsely furnished. A crude wooden table dominated the center, stained dark with what looked like dried fluids. Around it were several mismatched chairs. On the table, an array of unsettling items, rusty tools, lengths of rope, a collection of small, crudely carved wooden figurines, some resembling people, others animalistic. And then the photos, dozens of them, tacked to a corkboard on the wall. Photos of people, mostly women. Their faces were blurry, some scratched out, some with red circles around them. And in the center of the board, a single clear photo of me, smiling, from my Tinder profile. My blood ran cold. This was not just about me. This was a pattern, a collection. And then I saw her, Serena. She was standing by the table, her back to me, humming softly to herself. She was wearing something different now, a dark, practical jumpsuit, not the clothes from our date. Her hands were busy, meticulously arranging something on the table. My eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, a weapon, anything. And that is when I saw it. In the corner, half hidden by a tattered blanket, was a pile of clothing. Women's clothing. All different styles, different sizes. And among them, a familiar light blue jacket. My jacket. The one I would have been wearing when I first matched with her. The one I would worn to our date. My current jacket was ripped and dirty, but this one was clean, folded neatly. Like a trophy, a wave of nausea hit me. She had not just drugged me. She had changed my clothes. She had kept my old ones. Serena turned, and my heart nearly stopped. In her hand, she held a long, gleaming knife. She ran her thumb along its edge, a small, satisfied smile playing on her lips. "There you are, Alex," she murmured, her voice no longer sweet, but cold and sharp, like the blade. She had not seen me, not yet. She was talking to my photo on the board. "You've been so much fun, so much more, spirited than the others." My entire body trembled. I wanted to run, to scream, but I was frozen, trapped by fear and the sheer horror of what I was witnessing. She walked over to the corkboard, her eyes lingering on my photo. "But it is time to finish the game, is not it?" She reached out, her fingers tracing the outline of my face in the photograph. "You know, Alex, I thought you were different. I thought you might understand. But you ran, just like all the others." A sudden, sharp pain in my shoulder. I must have shifted. A branch snapped beneath my foot. Serena's head snapped toward the window. Her eyes, wide and predatory, locked onto my hiding spot. The smile vanished from her face, replaced by a chillingly focused expression. "Alex," she said, her voice now a low, dangerous growl. "You should not have done that." Before I could even react, she was moving. Fast. She burst out a cabin door, the knife glinting in the faint light. Pure adrenaline surged through me. I turned and ran, blindly, desperately, back into the labyrinth of the forest. I could hear her footsteps pounding behind me, closer than before. She was faster than I expected. "You can't escape. Alex." Her voice echoed through the trees, chilling me to the bone. "No one ever does." I pushed through thorns, scrambled over fallen logs, my body screaming in protest. My shoulder throbbed, my legs burned, but I could not stop. I had to find a way out. I had to survive. I saw a small, dark opening in the ground, a shallow cavity, or maybe just a deep overhang of rock. No time to think. I dove into it, scraping my knees, tucking myself into the cramped space. I pressed my face into the damp earth, trying to control my breathing, trying to make myself invisible. Serena ran past my hiding spot, her heavy footsteps thudding on the ground. I could hear her breathing, ragged and furious. She stopped just a few feet from where I was hidden. "Alex, I know you are here. Do not make me come find you." Silence. The air was thick with tension. I could feel her presence, a suffocating weight. My heart hammered, so loud I was sure she could hear it. Then a rustle. She was moving slowly, cautiously, searching. I could hear her soft, predatory hum. Suddenly, a rock shifted beneath my hand. A small, dry branch snapped. Her humming stopped. "Gotcha," she whispered, her voice right outside my hiding spot. I knew this was it. I closed my eyes, bracing myself. But then, a flicker of an idea, a desperate, insane idea. As she reached into the kavi, her hand outstretched, the knife glinting, I lunged, not towards her, but towards the side. I grabbed a fistful of loose dirt and gravel, and in one swift, desperate motion, I flung it directly into her face. She cried out a sharp, surprised yelp, stumbling back, clutching at her eyes. It was a split second, but it was all I needed. I scrambled out of the kavi, ignoring the pain, and ran. This time, I did not care about being quiet. I screamed a raw, primal scream that tore through my throat, hoping, praying that anyone would hear. I heard Serena curse, her voice still muffled by dust and pain. But then her footsteps started again, fueled by a terrifying rage. I ran faster than I ever thought possible, my body running on pure adrenaline and the desperate will to live. The trees finally started to thin. I saw a faint, gray light in the distance, the first hint of dawn. And then, through the trees, a break, a clearing, and in the clearing, a narrow, unpaved road. I burst out of the woods, stumbling onto the gravel road, my legs giving out beneath me. I collapsed, gasping, my body racked with pain and exhaustion. But I was out. I was out of the woods. I could still hear Serena's enraged screams behind me, her footsteps still coming. But she was falling behind. The road. I had to get to the road. I dragged myself up, my vision swimming, and stumbled down the dirt track. I did not know where it led, but it was away from her, away from that cabin. I ran until my lungs felt like they would burst, until my legs were numb. I did not know how far I would gone, but the woods were a dark, silent wall behind me now. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange. And then, in the distance, a sound. Faint at first, then growing louder. The hum of an engine. A car. I stood in the middle of the road, waving my arms frantically, screaming, my voice raw and hoarse. Help. Please. Help me. The car, an old pickup truck, slowed down, then pulled to a stop a few yards away. The driver, an elderly man with a weathered face, stared at me, his eyes wide with shock. I must have looked like a wild animal covered in dirt. Blood, my clothes torn, my hair a tangled mess, my eyes wide with terror. Please. I sobbed, collapsing onto my knees, my voice breaking. Please help me. She is in the woods. She tried to kill me. The old man, after a moment of stunned silence, finally reacted. He got out of his truck, his face etched with concern. He did not ask questions. He just helped me into the passenger seat, gave me a blanket, and drove. He called 911 on his ancient flip phone, his voice calm and steady as he described finding a distraught young woman on a remote logging road. The police arrived, then paramedics. The questions started. I told him everything through sobs and shivers about Serena, about the dating app, the specific questions, the drug drink, waking up in the woods, the effigy, the cabin, the chase. They took me to the hospital. My shoulder was dislocated. I had countless cuts and bruises, and I was severely dehydrated and in shock. The police searched the area. They found the logging road, but the cabin, it was gone. Or rather, it was there, but it was empty. No tools, no photos, no strange figurines. No evidence of a struggle. Just an old, abandoned shack in the middle of nowhere. It was like a ghost had lived there. And Serena, she was nowhere to be found. Her car, the one she would pick me up in, was never located. Her Tinder profile vanished. Her number was disconnected. It was like she had never existed. But she did. I know she did. I have the scars, both visible and invisible, to prove it. I never went back on dating apps. Never again. The thought of it still makes my stomach clench. I moved out of my apartment, changed my phone number, Try to erase every trace of my old life that Serena might have known. I still check my locks 3 times before bed. I still jump at shadows. I still scan every face in the crowd, convinced I will see her unsettling smile, her intense, predatory eyes. They say she was probably just some deranged individual, a serial abductor who used dating apps to find her victims. But I know it was more than that. It was personal. She wanted me. And for a terrifying night, she almost had me. Sometimes when the wind howls just right, or when I'm alone in the dark, I can still hear her voice, sweet and menacing, echoing through the trees. Alex, where are you? Alex, come out, wherever you are. All right, so you guys know the drill. Dating apps. They are a necessary evil these days, right? A digital minefield you navigate, hoping to stumble upon a decent human being amidst the bots, the scammers, and the people who clearly have not updated their profile picture since high school. I would have been on and off Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, you name it. Each time, I would swear it off after a particularly bad string of dates, only to find myself re-downloading it a few months later, usually on a lonely Friday night with a pizza box for company. This story, though this one made me delete them all for good, and I have not looked back since. It started like any other attempt to re-enter the digital dating pool. I would just gotten out of a relationship that had fizzled out more like a damp firecracker than a dramatic explosion, leaving me feeling, well, just a bit empty. So, I updated my Tinder profile, tried to make myself look less like a guy who spends too much time staring at spreadsheets and more like a rugged, outdoorsy type who also appreciates a good craft beer. You know, the usual charade. I swiped for a few days, mostly left, until one evening, her profile popped up. Her name was, or so I thought at the time, Sarah. And she was stunning. Not in an over-the-top, Instagram model way, but in a genuinely captivating way. Bright, intelligent eyes, a warm smile, and a bio that actually sounded like a real person wrote it. She loved hiking indie films and claimed to make a mean lasagna. I swiped right, almost without thinking. To my surprise, it was an instant match. We started chatting, and it was easy, effortless, even. She was witty, engaging, and seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. We talked about everything: our jobs, our families, our travel dreams. She laughed at my bad jokes, and I found myself genuinely looking forward to her next message. After a few days of this, I suggested we meet for coffee. She readily agreed. The day of our first date, I was actually excited, which, if you've been on as many mediocre Tinder dates as I have, is a rare feeling. I picked a cozy coffee shop downtown, the kind with exposed brick and a faint smell of roasted beans. She walked in right on time, and she looked even better in person. She was wearing a simple but stylish olive green sweater, jeans, and her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail. Her smile was just as warm, and her eyes sparkled when she saw me. The date itself was great. We talked for almost 2 hours, the conversation flowing naturally from one topic to the next. She told me about her job in graphic design, her love for obscure documentaries, and how she would once backpack through Southeast Asia. She listened intently when I spoke, asking thoughtful follow-up questions. I found myself feeling a connection I had not felt in a long time. There was just one tiny thing, a fleeting moment, that nudged at the back of my mind. It was not a red flag, not even a yellow one, more like a faint, almost imperceptible whisper or something. At one point, I was telling her about a hiking trip I would taken last summer, and she interjected, "Oh, I know exactly what you mean. That feeling of getting to the top and just seeing everything spread out below you. It is like you are on top of the world." Her words were perfectly normal, but the way she said, almost like she was reciting a line, or maybe just a little too enthusiastic, made me pause for a split second. I shrugged it off. Nerves, maybe, or maybe I was just overthinking. As usual, the date ended with a promise of a second one, and I walked home feeling a genuine sense of optimism. A few days later, we had our second date dinner this time at a bustling Italian place. Again, she was charming, funny, and attentive. The conversation was easy, and I felt myself relaxing into her presence. We talked about future plans, even joked about ridiculous hypothetical scenarios. Everything seemed to be going perfectly. I was starting to think, wow, maybe this is it. Maybe I actually found someone decent on Tinder. That night after I got home, I was unwinding, scrolling through my phone, just aimlessly browsing. I do not even remember why, but I opened Bumble, an app I had not touched in weeks, maybe even months. I was just idly swiping, not really paying attention, when a profile popped up that made my thumb freeze mid-swipe. My breath hitched. My stomach dropped like a stone. It was her. The same bright, intelligent eyes. The same warm smile. The same slightly messy but charming blonde hair. Even one of the photos, a selfie where she was holding a mug and smiling into the camera, was identical to one on Sarah's Tinder profile. But the name was not Sarah. It was Emily. For a moment, my mind went blank. What the hell? Was this some kind of elaborate scam? Had someone stolen Sarah's photos and made a fake profile? But why would they use the exact same photos? And why would they just change the name? It did not make sense for a typical catfishing scam. My heart started to pound with a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. Morbid curiosity, mixed with a growing sense of dread, compelled me to swipe right on Emily. To my utter bewilderment, it was another instant match. Bumble popped up with the usual "you have matched" notification. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. This was not right. This was not normal. I opened the chat with Emily, and for a long moment, I just typed and deleted. What do you even say in a situation like this? Hey, are not you also Sarah from Tinder, whom I just had dinner with? No, that was insane. That was confrontational. And frankly, a little terrifying. I decided to play it cool. I sent a generic "hey, how's your week going" message, trying to sound as casual as possible, even as my hands were shaking slightly. Her reply came almost immediately. Hey, my week's been pretty good so far. Just finished up a big project at work. How about yours? The message itself was innocuous, but the speed of the reply, the slightly generic phrasing, it felt familiar. Too familiar. I started to scroll back through my Tinder chat with Sarah, and that is when the real chill set in. Her opening line to me on Tinder: hey, my week's been pretty good so far. Just finished up a big project at work. How about yours? It was almost word for word identical. My blood ran cold. This was not a coincidence. This was not a scammer. This was the same person. She was using multiple identities. But why? The question screamed in my head, echoing in the sudden silence of my apartment. Was she a serial dater, casting a wider net? Or was there something far more sinister at play? A knot of dread tightened in my stomach. I felt a prickle of unease spread across my skin. The charming, witty Sarah, who I would just had a lovely Italian dinner with, was also Emily from Bumble. And who else? I decided I needed to confirm it without directly confronting her. I needed more evidence. So, I started chatting with Emily on Bumble, trying to mirror the pace and tone of my conversations with Sarah on Tinder. And it was uncanny. The way she responded, her turn of phrase, even the emojis she used, it was all disturbingly consistent. I asked Emily about her job. Oh, I am a graphic designer, she replied. It is pretty creative, which I love, but sometimes client can be a nightmare. I scrolled to my Tinder chat with Sarah. I am a graphic designer. It is pretty creative, which I love, but sometimes client can be a nightmare. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. This was not just a few similar lines. It was almost like she had a script, a pre-written personality she deployed depending on the app. I started to feel a growing sense of paranoia. Was I being tested? Was this some kind of social experiment? Or was I just a mark? I needed to push it further. I needed to see if I could catch her in a lie, or at least confirm my suspicions beyond a shadow of a doubt. I casually suggested to Emily that we get coffee sometime. She agreed, again with the same easy enthusiasm. I tried to schedule it for a different day than anything I had planned with Sarah, but close enough that it would feel like a tight schedule for her. The next few days were a blur of nervous anticipation and meticulous planning. I was still chatting with Sarah on Tinder, keeping up the pretense, all the while interacting with Emily on Bumble, feeling like a detective in my own life. I started looking for subtle differences when I was on my phone. Had she changed her hair slightly? Was there a specific piece of jewelry she wore often? I felt like I was losing my mind, constantly analyzing every detail. Then, the universe decided to throw another curveball. A few nights later, I was bored, scrolling through IU2B. I rarely used IU2B dating, but for some reason, I clicked on it. And there she was again. This time, her name was Jessica. My jaw clenched. The same eyes, the same smile, the same exact profile picture with the mug. It was undeniable. 3 profiles, 3 different names, the same woman. My blood ran cold, again, but this time it was mixed with a surge of adrenaline. This was not just a weird coincidence. I did not even bother matching with Jessica. I just stared at the profile, a cold dread washing over me. This woman was meticulously crafting multiple personas, spreading herself across different platforms. Why? What was her endgame? My mind reeled with possibilities, each one more unsettling than the last. Was she gathering information? Was she running some kind of con? Or was she just insane? The thought of sitting across from her again, knowing she was playing this elaborate game, made my skin crawl. The charming, witty persona now felt like a carefully constructed mask. Every laugh, every thoughtful question, every shared interest, was it all just a performance? I had a second date scheduled with Sarah for that Friday night, and a first date with Emily for Saturday afternoon. I decided I could not go through with it, not without confronting her, or at least getting a definitive answer. I canceled the date with Sarah that Friday morning, citing a sudden work emergency. She seemed understanding, wishing me luck with my emergency, and suggested we reschedule soon. Her response was polite, almost too polite. Was there a hint of something else in her tone? I could not tell. My paranoia was at an all-time high. Then came Saturday, the Emily date. My heart was thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs as I walked into the coffee shop. I was early, and I picked a table in the corner, trying to appear nonchalant, but my eyes darted toward the entrance every few seconds. I had rehearsed what I would say, how I would casually drop hints, how I would try to gauge a reaction. But deep down, I knew there was no casual way to ask. Hey, why are you also Sarah and Jessica? She walked in a few minutes later. She was wearing a different outfit than I would seen her in, as Sarah a bright yellow sundress instead of her usual more muted tones. Her hair was styled slightly differently, a little looser, more casual, but there was no mistaking her. It was the same woman. She smiled that familiar warm smile and waved. Hey, so glad we could finally meet, she said, her voice light and friendly. I forced a smile back, feeling like my face was in a crack. Yeah, me too. Emily. The name felt like ash in my mouth. We ordered our coffees, and she launched into conversation, asking me about my week, about my job. It was the exact same script, the same easy banter, the same questions, the same enthusiastic responses. Every word felt like a lie. Every smile felt like a calculated move. I tried to follow my plan, to drop subtle hints. I talk about how I sometimes felt like people presented different versions of themselves online versus in person. She nodded, agreeing wholeheartedly. Oh, definitely, she said. It is like everyone has a curated persona, for social media, right? It is so hard to know who is real. The irony was suffocating. She was saying this with such sincerity, such conviction, that for a split second, I almost doubted myself. Was I crazy? Was this some elaborate misunderstanding? But then I remembered the identical profiles, the identical messages. No, this was real. I decided to go for a more direct, but still somewhat veiled, approach. You know, I said, try and keep my voice steady. I was actually scrolling through Bumble the other day, and I swear I saw someone who looked exactly like you. Like identical, but with a different name. It was so weird. Her smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second. Her eyes, those bright, intelligent eyes, seemed to lose a little of their sparkle. A subtle shift, but I caught it. Oh, really? She said, her voice a little too casual. That is so strange. I guess I just have one of those faces. Huh? Or maybe someone's using my photos. She laughed, a short, brittle sound that did not reach her eyes. Yeah, maybe, I said, pressing on. But it was so spot-on. Even the bio was similar. Do you ever use other dating apps besides Bumble? That is when the mask slipped completely. Her eyes narrowed, just a fraction. The warmth drained from her face, replaced by an unnerving stillness. It was like watching a switch flip. The charming, bubbly Emily vanished, and in her place was someone cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of emotion. Why do you ask? She said, her voice now flat, devoid of its earlier lightness. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. I had pushed too far. No reason. I stammered, trying to backtrack, suddenly feeling a surge of pure, unadulterated fear. Just curious. I mean, it is a small world, right? She leaned forward slightly, her gaze locking onto mine. It was not the intense, probing gaze from the previous story, but it was just as chilling. It was a look of a predator who had just realized its prey was aware. It is a small world, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but it cut through the din of the coffee shop with unsettling clarity. And sometimes people see things they should not, or they look too closely. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. My entire body tensed. This was not a conversation anymore. This was a threat. Look, I just meant that it was a weird coincidence. I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to control it. I needed to get out. Now, she did not break eye contact. Her lips curved into a faint, humorless smile. Coincidences happen, she said. But sometimes they are not coincidences at all. Sometimes they are put there for a reason, to see who is paying attention. My mind screamed. This was not just about dating apps anymore. This was about something far more sinister. She was not just using multiple identities to find dates. She was using them for some unknown, terrifying purpose, and I had stumbled into her web. I just remembered I have something urgent I need to take care of. I blurted out, pushing my chair back with a scrape that made several heads turn. I am really sorry. Emily, I have to go. I did not wait for a response. I practically ran out of the coffee shop, not even bothering to pay for my half-drunk coffee. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced myself to move, to blend in with the Saturday afternoon crowd, constantly glancing over my shoulder. I half expected to see her following me, her cold gaze fixed on my back. I did not stop until I was back in my apartment, slamming the door shut and double-locking it. My hands were shaking so violently I almost dropped my keys. I leaned against the door, gasping for breath, my heart still pounding like a drum. The next few hours were a blur of frantic activity. I deleted Tinder, Bumble, Hinge. I used to be dating every single app I had. I blocked Sarah, Emily, and Jessica on every platform I could think of. I even considered changing my phone number, but that felt like an overreaction, even for the level of panic I was experiencing. But the fear did not dissipate. It clung to me, a cold, clammy blanket. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Every shadow outside my window made me freeze. I kept replaying her words, her shift in demeanor, that chilling, empty smile. The why gnawed at me. Why did she have so many identities? Was she trying to evade someone? Was she a con artist? Or something far worse? The ambiguity was what made it so terrifying. I had no idea what her true intentions were, and that unknown was far scarier than any specific threat. For weeks, I slept with the lights on, convinced I saw her face in the shadows, or heard her voice calling my name from the street below. I changed my routine, taking different routes to work, avoiding places I knew she might frequent. I felt like I was being hunted, even though I had not seen her since that horrifying coffee date. The messages stopped, thankfully. No new profiles popped up. It was as if she had simply vanished, retreating back into the digital ether from which she had emerged. But the experience left an indelible mark on me. I still do not use dating apps. The thought of putting myself out there again, of sifting through profiles, of trusting someone based on a few pictures, and a carefully crafted bio, it makes my skin crawl. Because I know, now firsthand, how easily someone can construct an entirely false persona, how seamlessly they can weave themselves into your life, all while hiding a chilling truth beneath the surface. And sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and my mind starts to wander, I still wonder how many other profiles she had out there. How many other Sarahs, Emily's, and Jessicas were actively chatting with unsuspecting people, spinning their intricate webs of deception. And I wonder if, somewhere out there, one of those people, just like me, stumbled upon her secret. And I wonder what happened to them. Because I was lucky enough to just walk away. But I still do not know what she was truly capable of. And that is what truly keeps me up at night. You know, the kind of fear that sinks its teeth into you and just stays there. Not a jump scare, not a fleeting fright, but a cold, heavy dread that becomes a part of your daily life. That is what I was living with after the whole Sarah Hemela Jessica incident. I told you about it, the dating apps, the 3 profiles, the chilling whisper in the coffee shop that made me run like hell. For weeks, months even. I was a wreck. Every shadow felt like a lurking threat. Every unfamiliar car parked on my street sent my heart into a frantic drum solo. I deleted every dating app, every social media account that could possibly be linked to me. I changed my routines, took different routes to work, even considered moving out of my apartment. It was a constant, exhausting state of paranoia. I felt like I was being watched, like her words to see who was paying attention were a permanent brand on my psyche. The why still gnawed at me, a relentless itch I cannot scratch. Why go to such lengths? What was the point of that elaborate, terrifying game? I tried to talk about it, briefly, to a close friend, but their eyes just glazed over. Catfishing happens, they said, but this sounds extreme. Are you sure you are okay? They did not get it. They could not understand the sheer, calculated malice behind it. The way her warmth had vanished like smoke, replaced by something ancient and cold. It was not just about being lied to, it was about being chosen, singled out for some unknown, unsettling purpose. I became incredibly isolated. My social life, already a bit thin, evaporated. How could I trust anyone new? How could I even meet anyone new without the very tools that had led me into that nightmare? I spent my evenings scrolling through obscure subreddits, forums dedicated to stalking victims, to people who'd experienced extreme psychological manipulation. I was desperate for answers, for validation, for someone, anyone who understood. It was on one of those forums, buried deep in a thread about online identity theft, that I found it. A post from a user named Mark Underwood. He described an experience eerily similar to mine: multiple profiles, subtle threats, the feeling of being targeted. His story resonated with me on a level no one else has had. He spoke of the isolation, the fear of judgment, the struggle to articulate the sheer horror of it all. I started following his posts. He was articulate, empathetic, and seemed to genuinely want to help others. He would offer advice, share coping mechanisms, and slowly, subtly, start building a sense of community within the forum. He talked about how important it was for victims to connect, to share their stories, to realize they were not alone. And for someone like me, who felt utterly alone and increasingly unhinged, it was a lifeline. After a few weeks of lurking, I decided to take a chance. I messaged him privately. I told him my story, leaving out some of the more terrifying details. Still wary, but desperate for an ear that would not dismiss me. His reply came quickly. It was long, thoughtful, and incredibly validating. He shared more details of his own experience, details that mirrored mine even more closely than his public posts had revealed. He mentioned the specific way the threat felt, the almost imperceptible shift in the person's eyes, the cold calculation. He understood. He truly understood. We exchanged messages for a few weeks. He seemed like a genuinely good person, someone who had been through hell, and was now dedicated to helping others navigate their own. He talked about the psychological toll, the way it stripped you of your sense of safety and trust. He encouraged me to talk, to vent, to process. For the first time since that coffee shop, I felt a flicker of hope, a tiny ember in the cold ash of my paranoia. Then he brought up the idea. A small, in-person gathering. A support retreat, he called it. He explained that while online forums were great, there was something uniquely healing about being in the same room with people who truly got it. No judgment, no skepticism, just shared understanding and support. He envisioned it as a safe space, a chance to truly connect, share experiences, and maybe, just maybe, start the long process of healing together. He suggested a location, a small, independent motel, a few hours' drive from where most of the interested members lived. He emphasized its privacy, its discretion. It is out of the way, he wrote, perfect for people who want to keep a low profile and feel completely safe from prying eyes. My gut twisted. A motel. Remote. My alarm bells, which had been dulled by weeks of Mark's empathy, started to clang faintly. This felt too much like a setup for something else. I remembered the chilling words from the previous incident, the calculated nature of it all. Had I learned nothing? But then I reread his messages, his genuine concern, his shared trauma. I looked at the forum, at the other users who seemed just as eager for this retreat. They were posting about their excitement, about finally finding a place where they belonged. Mark had even vetted everyone, he said, ensuring only legitimate victims, people who truly needed the support, would be invited. He even suggested a small fee to cover the cost of the meeting room and some refreshments, which seemed reasonable enough. I wrestled with it for days. The paranoia fought with a desperate need for connection. The rational part of my brain screamed, no, this is how you get into trouble. But the lonely, bruised part whispered, what if this is it? What if this is your chance to finally heal, to stop living in fear? It was not a dating app. It was not a romantic lure. This was about support, about healing. These were victims like me. It felt different. It felt safe. Eventually, the desire for understanding, for release from the suffocating grip of my own paranoia, won out. I rationalized it. I would drive myself. I would not drink anything offered. I would keep my phone charged and ready. I would be cautious. I would be smart. I told Mark I was in. The day of the retreat arrived, a gray, overcast Saturday. I packed a small bag, mostly out of habit. The motel was called the Whispering Pines Inn. Even the name sent a shiver down my spine. It sounded like something out of a horror movie. Mark had sent the exact address and a room number for meeting. The drive was long, taking me further and further off the main highway, onto progressively smaller, less maintained roads. The landscape grew sparse, the trees denser, taller, pressing in on either side of the asphalt. My phone signal started to flicker, then vanished entirely. My heart, already a nervous little bird, began to beat a frantic rhythm. The motel appeared suddenly, tucked away behind a dense thicket of pines. It was exactly as I would imagine old 2 stories. Faded paint peeling in strips from the wooden siding. The sign, a rickety affair with a single flickering neon tube, advertised vacancies in a ghostly blue. The parking lot was mostly empty, just a couple of beat-up sedans and a rusty pickup truck. No sign of the bustling, supportive community I would envisioned. I pulled my car into a spot farthest from the building, facing the road, ready for a quick escape if needed. My hands were clammy on the steering wheel. This was it. The point of no return. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing pulse. It is fine. I told myself. It is just a motel. It is just a support group. You are being paranoid. But the words fell hollow, a desperate attempt to drown out the screaming sirens in my gut. I walked towards the main office. The glass door was smudged, the open sign crooked. Inside, the lobby was dim, smelling faintly of stale cigarettes and disinfectant. A young man, his eyes bloodshot and distant, was behind the counter, scrolling on his phone. He barely looked up when I entered. Checking in, he mumbled, without making eye contact. "No, I am here for the meeting," I said, my voice sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet space. The support group, room 114. He finally looked up, his gaze flat, unreadable. A strange, almost imperceptible smirk played on his lips for a fraction of a second before vanishing. "Right. Room 114. Just down the hall, first door on the left." He pointed vaguely. "They are waiting for you. They are waiting for you." The words echoed in the silence, chilling me to the bone. Not Mark is waiting, or the group is waiting. Just they, and the way he said it, with that faint, unsettling smirk. It was not a welcome. It was a premonition. I thanked him, my voice barely a whisper, and turned to walk down the narrow hallway he indicated. The carpet was threadbare, patterned with a hideous floral design that seemed to writhe in the dim light. The air grew colder with every step. Room 114. The door was slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness visible within. No sound of conversation, no friendly chatter, no sign of a bustling support group. Just an oppressive silence that hummed with an unseen tension. My hand trembled as I pushed the door open further. The room was almost completely dark, save for a single, bare bulb hanging from the ceiling, casting a sickly yellow glow. It was not a meeting room at all. It was just a standard motel room, furniture pushed against the walls to create an empty space in the center. And in that space, sitting on chairs arranged in a loose semicircle, were people. Multiple people. They were not talking. They were not moving. They were just sitting there, perfectly still, staring straight at the door. Staring straight at me. My blood ran cold. This was not a support group. This was not Mark. There were 6 of them, maybe 7. Their faces were indistinct in the poor light, but their eyes, glinting in the gloom, were fixed on me with an unnerving intensity. Varied ages, varied builds, but all united by that silent, unsettling gaze. They did not look like victims. They looked expectant. Predatory. My breath hitched in my throat. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to run, to turn, to bolt out of that motel, and never look back. But my feet felt rooted to the floor, my mind paralyzed by the sudden, horrifying realization. Then one of them moved. Slowly, deliberately, a figure rose from their chair at the far end of the semicircle. They stepped forward out of the deepest shadows, into the flickering, sickly light of the bare bulb. My heart stopped. It was her. Sarah, Emily, Jessica, whatever her name was, it was her. She was wearing a simple, dark dress, her hair pulled back from her face. That same stunning, captivating face, but now devoid of any pretense of warmth. Her smile was slow, deliberate, and utterly chilling. It was not a smile of welcome, it was a predator's grin. "You came," she said, her voice soft, almost a whisper, yet it cut through the silence like a razor. There was no trace of the cold threat from the coffee shop. No hint of the charming persona from the dating apps. This was something else entirely. This was satisfaction. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the impossible. What? What is this? I stammered, my voice barely audible. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes, dark and fathomless, never leaving mine. This, she began, sweeping a hand vaguely toward the silent figures behind her, is the next step. I told you, did not I? Coincidences happen, but sometimes they are put there for a reason, to see who is paying attention. A knot of ice formed in my stomach. Mark, the forum, it was all you. She chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Mark Underwood, a very effective alias. Would not you agree? People are so eager to connect, to believe they have found someone who understands their pain. It is a powerful motivator, would not you say? The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The forum, the shared trauma, the empathy, the retreat, it was all a meticulously crafted lie. A trap designed with surgical precision to lure me, specifically me, into this isolated, terrifying room. She had not just been playing a game on dating apps, she had been preparing me for this. Why? I whispered, my voice raw with terror. What do you want? Her smile widened, revealing a flash of perfectly white teeth. Want? Oh, darling, that is the wrong question. It is not about what I want. It is about what we do. And you, my friend, are the newest player in our little game. The other figures in the room shifted slightly, a collective intake of breath, a subtle rustle of clothing. They were no longer just silent observers, they were becoming active participants. Their eyes, now that I looked closer, held not just expectation, but chilling gleam of amusement, of anticipation. One of them, a tall man with a shaved head, slowly stood up. Then another, a woman with a sharp, angular face. They began to spread out, forming a loose circle, slowly closing the distance between me and the door. The rules are simple, she continued, her voice still unervingly calm, as if discussing the weather. You have been selected. You have proven your attentiveness. Now, we get to see what else you are capable of. My mind screamed. This was not some twisted psychological experiment. This was something far, far worse. The game was not metaphorical. The players were not just observers. I was the prey. I did not wait to hear more. Every instinct, every primal urge for survival, took over. I spun around, my heart hammering against my ribs, and lunged to the door. He is fast. I heard her say, a hint of genuine interest in her voice, as if she were observing an insect. My hand fumbled for the doorknob, my fingers slick with sweat. I twisted it, pulled, and burst out of room 114, slamming the door shut behind me with a desperate, pathetic thud. I did not look back. I did not care if they were right behind me. All I knew was that I had to run. I sprinted down the hallway, the awful floral carpet blurring beneath my feet, the stale air thick with my terror. The lobby was empty, the bloodshotty clerk gone. Or maybe he was just hiding. Maybe he was one of them too. I burst through the main glass door, gasping for air, and stumbled into the cool, damp evening. The parking lot was still dim, the pines looming like silent sentinels. My car. I had to get to my car. My legs burned, my lungs screamed for oxygen. I fumbled for my car keys, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped them. I heard sound behind me, muffled but distinct. Footsteps. Multiple footsteps. I jammed the key into the ignition, the engine sputtering to life with agonizing slowness. I threw the car into reverse, tires squealing as I backed out of space. In my rear-view mirror, I saw them. 3 figures were already out of the motel door, silhouetted against the dim light, watching me. She was among them, her face a pale, unreadable mask. I slammed my foot on the gas, tearing out the parking lot, gravel spitting from beneath my tires. I did not care which way I was going, just away. Away from that motel, away from her, away from those silent, predatory strangers. I drove like a maniac, speeding down the dark, winding road, my headlights cutting through the oppressive blackness. I did not know if they were following me. I did not dare to look in my rear view mirror for more than a fleeting second. Every shadow, every rustle of leaves against the car, every distant light felt like a pursuing threat. My phone miraculously flickered back to life as I got further away from the motel. I pulled over onto the shoulder, my whole body shaking uncontrollably. I gripped the steering wheel, trying to steady my breathing, trying to make sense of the absolute nightmare I had just lived. I called the police. My voice was hoarse, choked with fear. There is a motel. The Whispering Pines Inn. I think I just escaped something. A trap, a woman, other people. The dispatcher was calm, professional, but her questions were clinical. Can you describe the individuals? What exactly happened? Were you harmed? How could I explain? How could I tell them about a woman who used 3 names, who lured me to a fake support group run by a fake online persona, only to find a room full of silent strangers and a chilling promise of a game? They would think I was crazy. They would not believe me. I tried to give them the address, the room number, the names I knew, but all sounded so disjointed, so unbelievable, even to my own ears. They promised to send a unit to check it out, but I knew, deep down, that they would not find anything. They would not find a trace of the Mark Underwood Forum, or the silent strangers, or the woman with the terrifying smile. It would all be gone, vanish like smoke, leaving no evidence but my own shattered sanity. I never heard back from the police beyond a generic follow-up call a few days later, asking if I wanted to press charges for. What exactly? Harassment. Attempted kidnapping. They found nothing. Just an empty motel room. The clerk denied everything, claimed he would never seen me before. I do not know what they were planning in that room. I do not know what game she was talking about. I do not know who those other people were, or how many more there might be. But I know this the paranoia never left me. It only intensified, morphing from a vague fear into a concrete, terrifying reality. I live my life now in a constant state of hypervigilance. I do not trust strangers. I do not trust online interactions. I do not trust promises of connection or understanding, because I learned in the most horrifying way possible that sometimes the very thing you are desperate for can be the most insidious trap of all. And the why still haunts me, but now it is joined by an even more terrifying question: what if she is still playing? What if I was just a test and the real game has yet to begin? Hey guys, so this story, it is one of those that still makes my breath hitch when I think about it, even all this time later. It starts, as so many nightmares do, with a flicker of hope, a desperate reach for something real in a world that had become utterly terrifying. You heard the recap. Sarah, Hemela, Jessica had shredded my life, leaving me isolated, paranoid, and just plain broken. I was a ghost in my own skin, haunted by a calculated malice I could not comprehend. That is when I found the Forum and Mark Underwood. His words were like a balm, soothing the raw edges of my fear. He understood. He had been through it too, or so I thought. His empathy, his shared trauma. It was like finding an oasis in a desert. And then came the invitation, an in-person support retreat at a remote motel. My gut screamed, a primal, ancient alarm bell, but my mind, starved for connection, rationalized it away. This was not a date, it was healing. A chance to finally breathe. So, I drove. The drive itself was long, the kind where the radio signal fades in and out, replaced by static and the hum of tires on asphalt. The landscape slowly shifted from patchy farmland to dense, towering pine forests, their shadows long and deep even in the late afternoon sun. My phone, already barely clinging to a single bar, finally gave up the ghost about 20 miles out. Just me, the road, and the gnawing anticipation in my stomach. When I finally saw it, Whispering Pines Inn, The name felt less like a quaint invitation and more like a warning. It was not just remote, it was desolate. The motel was a single, long, low-slung building, faded mustard yellow paint peeling in strips, nestled deep in a clearing surrounded by an impenetrable wall of evergreens. The sign, a rusted metal rectangle, swung lazily on one chain, groaning a mournful tune in the breeze. There was not another car in the lot, just my beat-up sedan looking like a lost toy. My gut twisted again, a cold, hard knot of dread. This was not the cozy, community-driven image Mark had painted online. This was a place you want to disappear, or to be disappeared. I sat there for a long moment, engine idling, the air thick with the smell of pine needles and damp earth. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, to floor it and never look back. But the desperation was stronger, the need to understand, to connect, to heal. It was a siren song, pulling me forward. I cut the engine, the sudden silence deafening. The only sounds of the wind rustling through the pines, a distant bird cry, a frantic thumping of my own heart. Taking a deep, shaky breath, I grabbed my overnight bag and stepped out into the oppressive stillness. The air was colder here, even though it was still early autumn. It had a damp, earthy smell mixed with something else, something faintly metallic, like old blood. Or maybe that was just my imagination, already running wild. The office door was propped open with a chipped ceramic planter. Inside, a single flickering fluorescent light cast a sickly yellow glow over a dusty counter. No one was there. A bell, brass and tarnished, sat next to a smudged sign that read "Ring for service." I rang it. The sound, a surprisingly cheerful ding-dong, echoed unnervingly in the empty space. No one appeared. Just as I was about to ring it again, a figure emerged from a back room, pushing through a bead curtain that rattled like dry bones. It was Mark. He looked exactly like his profile picture, maybe a little older, a little more tired, but undeniably him. Medium height, slender build, kind eyes framed by wire-rimmed glasses, and a neatly trimmed beard that lent him an air of gentle intelligence. He wore a simple flannel shirt and jeans, looking less like a retreat organizer and more like someone who lived off the grid. "You made it," he said, his voice soft, a little hushed, but undeniably warm. He had that calm, reassuring tone I would come to rely on in his forum posts. I was starting to worry. Phone signal's a real beast out here. A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it almost made my knees buckle. He was real. He was here. And he seemed normal. Yeah, lost signal miles back. I managed, my voice a little hoarse. "This place is secluded." He chuckled, a low, pleasant sound. "That is the point, is not it? No distractions. Just us and the pines." He gestured around the empty lobby. "Sorry about the front desk. Old Mrs. Henderson, the owner, she is a bit eccentric. Takes her time. But she left your key." He reached behind the counter, pulling out a heavy brass key with a plastic tag marked Room 7. Room 7. I repeated, a faint unease stirring again. Are there other people here yet? I would envision a group, a small cohort of fellow survivors. Mark's smile faltered for just a second, a flicker I almost missed. Well, about that. A couple of others had last-minute emergencies. You know how it is. Trauma can be unpredictable, but a few are still planning to arrive tomorrow morning. For tonight, it will just be us. A chance to ease into it, get comfortable. My internal alarm bell, which had momentarily quieted, started to jingle again, softly at first. Just us, in this desolate place. But then I pushed it down. He was probably right. People flake, and a smaller group might be better for opening up. I needed to trust him. I had to. He led me down a dimly lit hallway, the floorboards creaking under our weight, past a series of identical, dark wooden doors. The air grew colder with each step. Room 7 is down here, he said, stopping at the very end of the hall. And mine's just across the way. Room 8. We will be close if you need anything. He handed me the key. Take your time getting settled. When you are ready, come on over my room. I thought we could start with some introductions. Maybe share a bit about what brought us here. Get that initial weight off our chests. His suggestion, though perfectly reasonable, sent a shiver down my spine. Sharing my deepest fears, my rawest wounds, in a stranger's room, in this isolated place, just the two of us. It felt intimate. Too intimate. But again, I rationalized. This was a support retreat. This was how it worked. Sounds good. I said, trying to inject more confidence into my voice than I felt. I will be over in a bit. My room was exactly what you would expect from a forgotten motel sparse. Clean but worn. A sagged double bed covered with faded floral comforter. A small dresser with peeling veneer. And a single, grime-streaked window looking out onto the dense, dark woods. The air inside was stale, smelling faintly of dust and old cigarettes. I dropped my bag on the floor, my hands trembling slightly as I locked the door, then chained it for good measure. A habit I would picked up since Sarah Hemela Jessica. I spent a nervous 20 minutes unpacking, then repacking, then just pacing. Every creak of the building, every rustle of leaves outside made me jump. My phone was dead, a useless brick. I felt utterly cut off, utterly alone. The isolation was suddenly a palpable thing, heavy and suffocating. Finally, unable to put off any longer, I took a deep breath and walked across the hall to room 8. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the door, listening. Silence. I knocked softly. Come in. Mark's voice, still warm, called from inside. I pushed the door open. His room was almost identical to mine, but it felt different. Warmer. Somehow, he had a small electric kettle bubbling on the dresser, and the faint aroma of herbal tea hung in the air. A well-worn backpack sat neatly by the bed. He was sitting in a rickety armchair, a book open in his lap. He looked up, smiling. Come on in. Make yourself comfortable. He gestured to the other armchair, equally rickety. I sat, trying to relax, but my muscles were coiled tight. He poured 2 mugs of tea, handing one to me. It smelled like chamomile. So, he began, his voice dropping to that familiar, soothing tone. No need to rush anything. But if you feel up to it, I would love to hear your story. Just whatever you are comfortable sharing. No judgment here. We are all in the same boat. He started first, which was a relief. He recounted his own experience, eerily similar to mine. The initial charm, the gradual erosion of trust, the feeling of being watched, the psychological games. He spoke of his date, a woman named Lena, who had meticulously orchestrated his downfall, leaving him a shell of his former self. His story was so specific, so raw, that it was impossible not to feel a connection. He described the cold dread, the isolation, the feeling of being utterly alone and understanding what had happened. He mirrored my own feelings with such precision, it was almost uncanny. As he spoke, I found myself relaxing bit by bit. This was it. This was the understanding I would craved. When it was my turn, the words tumbled out, a torrent of fear and frustration and trauma I would held captive for months. I told him everything, the terrifying encounters with Sarah Hemela Jessica, the way she seemed to know my every move, the chilling messages, the slow, deliberate dismantling of my life. I described the paranoia, the way I would delete apps, change routes, become a recluse. Mark listened intently, his gaze unwavering, occasionally nodding, his eyes reflecting a deep, knowing empathy. He asked insightful questions, the kind only someone who had truly experienced it could ask. Did you ever feel like she was enjoying it? He asked softly at one point, like it was a game to her. Yes. I practically gasped, the word escaping me like a trapped bird. Exactly. Like she was collecting data, experimenting. It was so clinical, so cold. He nodded slowly. That is it. That is the feeling. the calculated malice. They do not just want to hurt you, they want to own you, to break you down, and then rebuild you in their image of what a victim should be. His words resonated so deeply, it was almost painful. For the first time, I felt truly seen. The weight on my chest, which had been a constant companion, began to lift ever so slightly. We talked for hours, the tea growing cold, the room growing darker as the last vestiges of daylight faded outside. It felt good, cathartic. I felt a bond forming, a sense of camaraderie with this man who understood the unique hell I would endured. Around 10 of the clock, Mark finally stretched, a small yawn escaping him. Well, I think that is enough for one night. Do not want to overload ourselves. We can pick this up tomorrow. He stood, walking over to his dresser to switch off the kettle. As he turned, his flannel shirt shifted, and I caught a glimpse of something on his left hand. A faint, pale band of skin on his ring finger, starkly contrasting with the slightly tanned skin around it. A wedding ring tan line. My heart gave a sudden, sickening lurch. I tried to dismiss it. Maybe he was recently divorced. Maybe he just took his ring off for the retreat. But the image of Sarah Hemley Jessica flashed in my mind. Her perfect facade, the secret she hid, the calculated malice. I felt a cold prickle of unease, but I forced myself to smile. Yeah, sounds good. I am glad we talked. Mark. Me too, he said, his smile warm, his eyes still holding that deep, knowing empathy. Me too. See you in the morning. Back in my room. I could not shake the image of that 10 line. It was so faint, so easily missed. But it was there, and it gnawed at me. My paranoia, which had been lulled to sleep by Mark's comforting words, began to stir, slowly, insidiously. I paced the small room again, my mind racing. Why would he hide it? If he was just divorced, why not mention it? It was not a big deal, unless it was part of a larger deception. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting. My past trauma was making me jumpy. Mark was a good guy. He understood. But the seeds of doubt, once planted, began to sprout. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the old motel. The wind outside seemed to howl louder now. The pines whispered secrets I could not understand. I tried to sleep, but every shadow seemed to dance. Every creak seemed to whisper his name. Around 3 a.m., unable to stand the oppressive silence and the frantic thumping of my own heart, I decided to get a glass of water. The motel had an ice machine down the hall. I figured the walk might clear my head. I slipped out of my room, carefully unlatching the chain and turning the deadbolt as quietly as possible. The hallway was pitch black, save for the emergency exit sign at the far end. My footsteps echoed eerily. I passed Mark's door. Room 8. It was dark, silent. As I reached the ice machine, a faint, rhythmic sound reached my ears. Not from the machine itself, but from Mark's room. A low, almost imperceptible hum. It sounded like a laptop fan. My heart began to pound anew. He was still up, or had he just left his laptop on? My paranoia, now fully awake and screaming, urged me to investigate. It was wrong. I knew it. But the image of that tan line, coupled with the unnerving isolation of this place, pushed me forward. I had to know. I had to. I crept back to his door, pressing my ear against the cold wood. The hum was definitely coming from inside. And then I heard another sound, faint but distinct, the rapid click-clack of a keyboard. He was typing. In the middle of the night, my hand trembled as I slowly, cautiously, turned the doorknob. To my surprise, it was not locked, just latched. He must have forgotten to lock it, or thought I was asleep. Or maybe he wanted me to find something. A sliver of light escaped from under the door. I pushed it open just an inch, then a bit more. The room was dark, but the glow of a laptop screen illuminated Mark's face, casting him in an eerie blue light. He was hunched over, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He had not heard me. He was too engrossed. I pushed the door open a little further, enough to see more clearly. He was sitting at the small, peeling dresser, the laptop open. His back was mostly to me, but I could see the screen. And what I saw made the blood drain from my face, leaving me cold and lightheaded. It was not a forum. It was not an email. It was a map, a highly detailed zoometed map of my neighborhood. And on it, a series of red dots connected by faint lines. My routes, my daily walks, my grocery store, my old workplace. Even the coffee shop I used to frequent, the one I had not told him about. Then, my eyes drifted to a smaller window open on the side of the screen. A text document. It contained bullet points. My bullet points. Details of my life. My routines, my habits, my fears. Things I had never posted online. Things only Sarah Hemela Jessica could have known. And then, horrifyingly, a section titled Target Profile my name. My breath hitched. My entire body went rigid. The air in my lungs froze. He was not a victim. He was not a fellow survivor. He was her. Or, worse, he was another one. A new predator. As if sensing my presence. Mark stopped typing. His head slowly turned. His eyes, no longer kind and empathetic, were now sharp, cold, and utterly devoid of emotion. They were the eyes of a hunter who had just spotted his prey. The mask, the carefully crafted facade of understanding and shared trauma, shattered into 1,000 pieces. Well, he said, his voice no longer soft, but low, guttural growl that sent shivers of pure terror down my spine. Look who decided to join the party. He pushed himself away from the dresser, slowly, deliberately. The blue light from the laptop cast grotesque shadows on his face, making him look demonic. My feet were glued to the floor. My mind screamed run, but my body refused to obey. I could only stare, paralyzed by the horror of what I had just discovered. You really did not think I was just Mark Underwood from some anonymous forum, did you? He continued, a mocking smile twisting his lips. That I just happened to stumble upon your story and feel such profound empathy. Come on. You are smarter than that. Or at least you used to be before she broke you. He took another step toward me, and I finally found my voice a strangled whisper. You were tracking me. All this time. He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Oh, much longer than all this time. You made it so easy. After Sarah Hemela Jessica, you were a prime candidate. So vulnerable, so desperate for understanding. A perfect blank slate, waiting for someone to paint their own picture on. My eyes darted to the wedding ring tan line, suddenly stark and undeniable. You are married. I choked out. You have a family. His smile widened, a truly chilling sight. And what does that have to do with anything? My wife, bless her heart, thinks I am on a business trip. A little me time to clear my head. She would never suspect. She is complacent. Unlike you, you are exciting. You are a challenge. He moved faster now, closing the distance between us. My paralysis broke. I scrambled backward, tripping over my own feet, barely catching myself before I fell. He was blocking the doorway. My escape route. Do not worry, he said, his voice a low, predatory purr. This is not about hurting you, not physically. Anyway, it is about the connection, the understanding. You see, I have been watching you for weeks, even before you posted on that forum. I saw how she broke you, and I thought what a magnificent piece of work. Such artistry in the destruction. I admired her. Truly. He reached out, his hand grasping my arm. His grip was surprisingly strong, his fingers digging into my flesh. And then I thought, why should she have all the fun? Why should not I get to experience that connection? That raw, unfiltered fear. That beautiful, desperate need for solace. My mind raced. Every fiber of my being screaming for escape. This was not just another stalker. This was someone who admired my tormentor. Someone who wanted to replicate it. Perhaps even surpass it. The calculated malice I would face before was now refined, perfected, aimed directly at me. Let go of me. I screamed, twisting my arm, trying to pull away. His grip tightened. Oh, we are just getting started. The retreat, remember, a safe space for victims to connect. He dragged me further into the room, away from the door. And now, you are my victim, and I am going to connect with you in ways you can't even imagine. I fought back, kicking, clawing, my adrenaline surging. I remembered the self-defense classes I would taken after Sarah Hemla Jessica, the ones I never thought I would need. My foot connected with his shin, hard. He grunted, momentarily loosening his grip. It was all I needed. I yanked my arm free, spinning around and lunging for the door. My fingers fumbled for the knob, twisting, pulling, but he was faster. He slammed his body against the door, blocking it, his weight pressing against it. Not so fast, he snarled, his face contorted into a mask of pure rage. The empathetic mark was gone, replaced by a monster. You are not going anywhere. We have so much to discuss, so much to share. I backed away, frantically searching the room for anything I could use as a weapon. My eyes landed on the electric kettle on the dresser. It was still plugged in, but the water was cold now. Still, it was heavy. He took another step, his eyes fixed on me, a chilling glint in their depths. You know, the best part about this place, no self-service, no neighbors for miles, just you and me, and the whispering pines. He gestured vaguely toward the window, where the dark woods loomed, silent and watchful. They have seen it all, these trees. They do not judge. He lunged. I grabbed the kettle, swinging it wildly, not caring where it landed. It connected with his shoulder with a dull thud. He cried out, stumbling back, momentarily stunned. This was my chance. I did not hesitate. I threw the kettle down and burst past him, shoving him hard as I squeezed the narrow gap he had created by a stumble. I tore out a roommate, slamming the door shut behind me, not bothering to lock it. My own room, room 7, was just across the hall. It felt miles away. My hands fumbled with my key, shaking so violently I almost dropped it. I jammed it into the lock, twisted, pushed the door open, and scrambled inside. The chain, the deadbolt. I slammed the door shut, my heart hammering against my ribs, and frantically secured both. I pressed my back against the door, gasping for breath, listening. Silence. A terrifying, oppressive silence. Had he followed? Was he waiting? Then, a faint sound from outside my door. A soft, deliberate chuckle. You can't hide forever. Mark's voice, low and calm, drifted through the thin wood. This is not over. Not by a long shot. Panic, cold and absolute, seized me. I was trapped in a remote motel with a predator who had meticulously planned my capture, who admired my previous tormentor, and who was secretly married, living a double life. My phone was dead. There was no one to call. I crept to the window, peering through the gap in the cheap blinds. The moon was high now, casting long, eerie shadows through pines. Nothing, but I knew he was out there, watching, waiting. I spent the rest of the night huddled in a corner of the room, clutching the only weapon I could find, a heavy, ceramic ashtray. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind, sent a fresh wave of terror through me. I did not know what he wanted, but I knew it would not be good. He was not just a stalker, he was a collector of broken souls, a connoisseur of fear, and I was his newest acquisition. The first sliver of dawn was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen, but it brought no comfort. I knew he was still out there. I had to escape. With the first hint of sunlight, I decided to make my move. I could not stay here. I could not wait for him to come for me. I had to get to my car. I moved silently, carefully unlatching the chain and turning the deadbolt. My hand trembled as I slowly, painstakingly, opened the door. The hallway was empty. Room 8 was silent. I crept out, my heart pounding like a drum, my eyes darting in every direction. The lobby was still empty. No Mrs. Henderson. No sign of Mark. I ran. I did not look back. I burst through the front door, into the crisp morning air, and sprinted across the gravel parking lot towards my car. My keys were in my pocket, a cold comfort. I fumbled for them, my hands shaking so badly I could barely aim the key at the lock. Just as my fingers wrapped around the door handle, a voice, calm and chillingly close, spoke from behind me, leaving so soon. I froze. I did not turn around. I did not dare. I just yanked the car door open, dove inside, and slammed it shut, locking it with a desperate click. My hands flew to the ignition, jamming the key in, twisting. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. I glanced in the rear-view mirror. Mark was standing just a few feet behind my car, a faint, knowing smile on his face. He was not rushing. He was not panicking. He just watched me. His eyes, still cold and predatory, held a message clearer than any words. This is not over. You got away this time, but I know where you live, and I will be back. I threw the car into reverse, tires spitting gravel, and then slammed it into drive, peeling out of the whispering pines and parking lot. I did not stop, did not even slow down until I hit the main highway, my phone finally showing a flicker of signal. But the escape did not bring relief. It brought a new, even deeper terror. I had escaped the motel, but I had not escaped Mark. He was out there. He knew everything. He had tracked me for weeks, admired my tormentor, and now he was my new one. The calculated malice I would face before was now a double-edged sword, wielded by someone who understood its power intimately. I was free, but the cold dread, the constant state of fear, had returned. Only this time it was worse, because now I knew what truly empathetic eyes could hide, and I knew that some monsters, once they have found you, never truly let you go. Sleep still does not come easy. Every shadow, every unexpected sound, every flicker of phone screen in a crowd makes my heart race, because, when you are out there swiping through profiles, you hear the stories. The catfish, the creeps, the guys who show up looking like they have not seen a shower since the Clinton administration. You tell yourself, that won't be me. You follow all the rules public place, tell a friend, do not get in their car on the first date. But then you meet someone like Michael, and suddenly, those rules feel a little rigid. Our dinner date, that first date, at the bustling Italian place downtown, it was everything I would hope for. He was Michael from the pictures, only better. His eyes crinkled at the corners when he laughed, a genuine, easy laugh that made me feel instantly at ease. We talked about everything, our shared love for obscure indie films, the hiking trails we both wanted to conquer, even the ridiculous antics of our respective pets. He listened, really listened, remembering little details I would mention earlier in the conversation, bringing them up again with a thoughtful question. The hours flew by. The restaurant, which had been packed when we arrived, was starting to thin out. The clatter of plates and the murmur of conversation began to fade, replaced by a softer hum. I remember feeling this warm, hopeful glow spreading through me. This was not just another dud. This was not just another guy. This felt different. Special, even. When the bill came, he insisted on paying, not in a grandstanding way, but with a quiet confidence that was disarmingly charming. As we walked out into the cool night air, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement, it had rained earlier, leaving everything with a slick, shimmering glow, I found myself wishing the night would not end. Well, Sarah, he said, turning to me with that warm smile, This was easily the best first date I've had in years. My heart did a little flutter. Mine too. Michael, seriously, we stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, and for a second, I thought he might lean in for a kiss. My stomach did a nervous flip, but he did not. Instead, he gestured towards a sleek, dark sedan parked a little way down the street. Listen, it is getting late, and I know your place is not exactly around the corner. Let me give you a ride home. It is no trouble at all. And there it was, the moment I usually brace for, the moment I usually politely declined, citing an early morning or a friend picking me up. But tonight felt different. We would just spent 3 incredible hours together, talking, laughing. He seemed so genuine, so good. All the red flags I usually hoisted high in my mind were lying limp, forgotten. My internal monologue, usually a stern safety instructor, was now a giddy teenager. He is so nice. Sarah, he is a good guy. It is just a ride home. Are you sure? I asked, a tiny flicker of my usual caution trying to assert itself. Absolutely, he said, his smile unwavering. It is on my way, practically. I hesitated for just a second longer, then made the decision that would haunt my nightmares for years to come. Okay, I said, a little too brightly. That would actually be great. Thanks. Michael. He opened the passenger door for me, a gentlemanly gesture that only solidified my rapidly crumbling defenses. The car was immaculate, smelled faintly of new leather and something fresh, like a subtle cologne. I settled into the plush seat, feeling a wave of comfort and excitement. This was it. This was the start of something. So, where to, he asked, pulling smoothly away from the curb. I gave him my address, and he nodded, repeating it softly as he navigated the downtown streets. We continued to chat, the conversation flowing as easily as it had over dinner. He asked about my work, my plans for the weekend. I felt a sense of ease, a kind of relief that I would finally found someone who felt right. After a few minutes, as we left the brighter, more populated downtown area, I noticed something. We were heading east, which was the correct general direction, but we usually took the highway to get to my neighborhood. Michael, however, was keeping to the surface streets. Oh, are we taking the scenic route? I asked, a light laugh in my voice. Usually, I just hop on I-5. He glanced at me, a brief, almost imperceptible shift in his expression. Yeah, I just figured this would be quicker tonight. Less traffic on these, back roads. I nodded, accepting his explanation. It made sense. Sometimes a highway could be a nightmare. We drove in comfortable silence for a bit, the city lights eventually giving way to dimmer street lights and the looming shadows of suburban trees. The houses here were older, set back from the road, with fewer lights on. It was a quieter part of town, not exactly my neighborhood, but not completely unfamiliar either. But then, a different kind of unease began to prickle at my skin. It was subtle at first, a tiny whisper in the back of my mind. We passed a large, dark park, one I recognized from driving around with friends years ago. Then, a few blocks later, a small, independent grocery store with a brightly lit sign that was broken, only displaying grocery SD. I remembered that sign. I would made a joke about it once. My brow furrowed slightly. Hey, Michael, this feels a little out of the way. Are you sure you are heading in the right direction? He did not look at me this time. His eyes were fixed on the road ahead, his hands gripping the steering wheel a little tighter than before. Just a shortcut. Sarah, trust me, I know these streets like the back of my hand. His voice was still calm, but there was an edge to it now, a subtle shift that made me feel, well, not comfortable. I tried to shake off the feeling. Do not be paranoid. Sarah, he is just trying to be nice. But the whisper grew louder, more insistent. We turned onto a street that was particularly dark, lined with overgrown trees that blotted out the already sparse streetlights. The houses here were even older, some boarded up, others just looking neglected and empty. This definitely was not my neighborhood. It was not even a neighborhood I would ever want to be in. And then I saw it, a rusted, leaning mailbox with the number 412 barely visible in the gloom. I remembered seeing that mailbox. I remembered seeing it just a few minutes ago. My breath hitched. No, it could not be. Michael, I said, my voice suddenly tight. Where are we going? This is not right. I know this street. We just passed his mailbox. He still did not look at me. His face was a stone mask in the dim light of the dashboard. Do not worry. Sarah, we are almost there. His voice was flat, devoid of the warmth it had held just an hour ago. Panic, cold and sharp, began to bloom in my chest. My heart started to pound, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. I looked out the window, desperately trying to find something, anything, to disprove my terrifying realization. But no, there was again the same broken grocery store sign, the same dark park, the same rusted mailbox. He was circling. He was driving in circles, over and over again, down the same stretch of dark, desolate street. Michael stopped the car. I demanded, my voice rising. My hands were clammy, trembling. This is not funny. Let me out. Now. He finally turned his head, and the smile was gone, replaced by something else entirely. His eyes, which had seemed so kind, were now cold, calculating, almost empty. A chill went down my spine that had nothing to do with the night air. Funny, he repeated, his voice dangerously low. Oh, Sarah, this is not funny at all. My breath caught in my throat. I fumbled for the door handle, my fingers clumsy with terror. It would not budge. I tried again, harder, pulling and yanking. Nothing. The door was locked. Of course it was. Unlock the door. Michael, I pleaded, my voice cracking. Let me out. I want to go home. He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound that sent shivers down my arms. Going home. Oh, no. Sarah, we are not going home. Not yet, anyway. My mind raced. My phone. Where was my phone? I patted my pockets, then realized I would put it in my purse, which was on the floor between my feet. I leaned down, my fingers scrambling through the contents. My heart leaped when I felt the familiar shape of it. I pulled it out, my thumb already flying to unlock the screen. Uh-huh, he said, his voice a soft warning, but his hand shot out, surprisingly fast, snatching the phone from my grasp before I could even register what was happening. Hey, I cried, trying to grab it back, but he was too quick. He tossed it into the back seat, where it landed with a soft thump, out of my reach. No distractions. Sarah, he said, his eyes back on the road, which was still the same dark, looping street. We need to focus. Focus on what? My mind screamed. Focus on the fact that I was trapped in a car with a man who had, in the space of an hour, transformed from a charming date into a terrifying stranger. Tears stung my eyes, but I forced them back. I could not cry. I had to think. I had to stay calm. Michael, please. I tried again, my voice trembling but trying to sound reasonable. What is this? What do you want? Just tell me, and I will do whatever you say. Just let me go. He let out a sigh, almost like he was annoyed. You asked too many questions. Sarah, you are a smart girl. Too smart, perhaps. He glanced at me again, that cold, empty look making my stomach clench. You picked up on the circling pretty quickly. Most people do not. My blood ran cold. He was testing me, playing with me. Why are you doing this? I whispered, my voice barely audible. He did not answer. He just continued to drive, round and round the same desolate block. The rhythmic hum of the engine, the constant turning, the unchanging scenery, it was disorienting, sickening. It felt like a psychological torture designed to break me down. I tried the window. It would not budge. I tried to roll it down, but the electric window switch was dead. Or maybe he would lock the windows too. The car felt like a metal tomb, sealed and airtight. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Each time we passed a leaning mailbox, a broken grocery store sign, the dark park, a fresh wave of despair washed over me. My mind started to play tricks. Was I imagining it? Was I going crazy? No, I was not. This was real. This was happening. You know, he said, breaking the silence, his voice now a low, conversational tone that was even more chilling than his earlier anger. It is funny how quickly people trust you. One good profile picture, a few clever lines, and they will get into your car, even after all the warnings. He shook his head slowly. Sad, really. He was talking about me. He was talking about my trust. My stomach churned. What are you going to do with me? I asked, the words barely a rasp. He finally turned off the looping street, making a sharp right onto an even darker, narrower road. This one was unpaved, gravel crunching loudly under the tires. The trees here were denser, forming a tunnel of shadows overhead. No houses, no streetlights, just the impenetrable blackness of the woods on either side. We are going for a little drive, he said, his voice taking on a sing-song quality that made my skin crawl. A little adventure. My heart pounded so hard, I thought it would burst through my chest. This was it. This was where the horror stories truly began. The isolated road, the dark woods. I started to hyperventilate, gasping for air. No, please. Michael, do not do this. I begged, tears finally streaming down my face. I have a family. I have friends. They will know I am missing. They will come looking for me. He laughed, a short, sharp bark that echoed in confined space of the car. Oh, Sarah, they won't know where to look. And by the time they do, it will be too late. The car bounced and jostled over the rough terrain. I pressed myself against the passenger door, searching desperately for any weakness, any way out. My eyes darted around the interior, but there was nothing, just the dark, sleek surfaces. Suddenly, he slammed on the brakes, throwing me forward against the seatbelt. The car skidded to a halt, kicking up a cloud of dust. We were in a small clearing, surrounded by towering, silent trees. In the distance, I could just make out the silhouette of what looked like an old, dilapidated shack or cabin. Well, here we are, Michael said, turning off the engine. The sudden silence was deafening, broken only by the frantic pounding of my heart and the chirping of crickets. He slowly turned to face me, his eyes gleaming in the faint moonlight filtering through the trees. That warm, charming smile was completely gone, replaced by a predatory grin that stretched too wide, showing too much teeth. Time to get out. Sarah, my body was frozen with terror. I could not move. My mind screamed at me to fight, to run, but my limbs felt like lead. He reached over and unbuckled his seatbelt. The click echoed loudly. I said, "Get out." His voice was no longer conversational. It was a command, laced with chilling authority. My eyes darted to the driver's side door. If I could just get out his side. As he reached for his door handle, my survival instinct finally kicked in. This was my only chance. My only desperate chance. With a primal scream, I lunged at him, not even thinking, just reacting. I clawed at his face, aiming for his eyes, anything to disorient him. He roared in surprise and pain, recoiling from my sudden attack. My nails, though short, were sharp, and I felt them tear across his cheek. He cursed, his hand flying to his face. That split second of distraction was all I needed. I did not try the passenger door again. Instead, I scrambled over the center console, kicking and pushing, trying to get to the driver's side. He lunged back at me, grabbing my arm, his grip like a steel vise. "You little bitch," he snarled, his voice guttural with rage. He yanked hard, pulling me back, but I twisted, thrashing like a wild animal. My elbow connected with his jaw with a sickening thud. He grunted, his grip momentarily loosening. I tore my arm free and fumbled for the door handle on his side. My fingers closed around it, and I yanked. This one actually opened. I did not wait. I threw myself out of the car, hitting the ground hard, my knees scraping on the gravel. Pain shot through me, but I barely registered it. All I knew was that I was out. I was out of the car. I scrambled to my feet, my legs wobbly, and took off running into the darkness of the woods. I did not know where I was going, did not care. Away from him. Just away. "Sarah," I heard his enraged roar behind me. "Get back here. You hear me. You can't run." His voice was terrifying, full of a cold fury that promised unspeakable things. I could hear the car door slam, then the crunch of his footsteps on the gravel, quickly turning into the heavier thud of him running through the underbrush. Panic let me speed. I crashed through bushes, stumbled over roots, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The trees were a blur, a confusing maze of shadows. I could hear him behind me, closer than I wanted, his heavy footsteps, the snapping of twigs under his boots. He was bigger, stronger, probably knew these woods better than I did. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I pushed myself harder. I had to get away. I had to. I heard him call my name again, closer this time. "Sarah, do not make this harder on yourself." His voice was a predator's, an animalistic growl. I risked a quick glance over my shoulder. Through the dense trees, I could see a dark, hulking shape moving rapidly, gaining on me. His eyes, even in the gloom, seemed to gleam with a chilling intensity. I veered sharply to the left, hoping to throw him off, crashing through a thicket of thorns that tore at my clothes and scratched my skin. I barely felt the pain. Adrenaline was a powerful anesthetic. Suddenly, the ground beneath my feet gave way. I stumbled, pitching forward, tumbling down a steep, muddy embankment. I cried out as I rolled, branches whipping at my face, dirt filling my mouth. I landed in a heap at the bottom, winded, bruised, and disoriented. For a moment, I just lay there, gasping, trying to get my bearings. Above me, I could hear Michael's heavy breathing, his frustrated curses. He was right there at the top of the embankment. "Where are you?" "Sarah," he snarled. "You can't hide from me." I held my breath, pressing myself against the muddy bank, trying to blend into the shadows. My heart was a frantic bird, trapped in a cage. I could hear him sliding down the bank, slowly, carefully, searching. I crawled on my hands and knees, deeper into the thick undergrowth at the bottom of the embankment, trying to be as silent as possible. The ground was wet and cold. I could hear him moving just a few feet away, his heavy footsteps crunching. Then, a beam of light cut through the darkness. He had a flashlight. "I know you are down here." "Sarah," he called out, his voice a low, chilling whisper. The beam swept across the ground, inching closer to my hiding spot. Come out, wherever you are." My body trembled uncontrollably. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying, bargaining with any higher power that would listen. "Please, please, do not let him find me." The beam of light passed over my head, agonizingly close, illuminating a patch of ferns just inches from my face. I could feel his presence, hear his breathing, smell the faint scent of his cologne, now mixed with dirt and sweat. He was so close. Then the light moved on, sweeping further down the embankment. He had not seen me. He was moving away. I waited, barely daring to breathe, until his footsteps faded into the distance. I could still hear his voice call my name, but it was fainter now, moving deeper into the woods, in the wrong direction. Slowly, carefully, I pushed myself up. Every muscle screamed in protest. My clothes were torn, my face and arms covered in scratches, my knees throbbing. But I was alive, and he had not found me. I moved in the opposite direction, away from his voice, away from the light. I stumbled to the woods, the fear still a cold knot in my stomach, but now mixed with a desperate, burning hope. I had to find a road. I had to find help. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 20 minutes, I saw it, a faint, distant glow, a light. It was a single, solitary streetlight in the far distance, a beacon in the terrifying darkness. I pushed myself harder, forcing my battered body to move faster. The trees began to thin, and I could hear the faint sound of traffic. A road. A real road. I burst out of the woods, stumbling onto a quiet, paved street. It was desolate, no houses immediately visible, but it was a road. And there in the distance was a faint glow of a gas station sign. I started to run again, a desperate, limping run, fueled by pure adrenaline and terror. I did not care about the pain, the exhaustion. I just needed to get there. When I finally reached the gas station, I practically collapsed against the glass door. The attendant, a young guy with sleepy eyes, looked up, startled, as I stumbled inside, disheveled, bleeding and sobbing. "Help me." I choked out, my voice raw. "Please, help me." He tried to take me. The attendant, seeing the state I was in, immediately grabbed his phone. Whoa, what happened? Are you okay? I am calling the police." The next few hours were a blur of flashing lights, sirens, and endless questions. I told him everything, through sobs and shivers, about Michael, the date, the car, the circling street, the woods, the chase. They took down every detail, every description. They searched the area, but by the time they got there, Michael and his dark sedan were long gone. They found my phone in the back of his car, abandoned in the clearing, along with a few other items they believed belonged to other victims. The police confirmed he was a known predator, using dating apps to lure women. He had been on their radar, but he was always one step ahead, always changing his tactics, his car, his identity. Michael was not even his real name. I never saw him again. But the memory of that night, of the circling car, of his cold eyes, of the terror in the dark, it is burned into my soul. I changed my number, moved to a different city, deleted all my dating apps. I see a therapist regularly. The fear still lingers, a constant shadow. Every unfamiliar car that slows down, every dark street, every friendly stranger brings back a fresh wave of that primal terror. You think you are safe. You follow the rules. But sometimes the monsters look just like everyone else. Sometimes they are charming, witty, and share your love for indie films. And sometimes they are just waiting for you to let your guard down, to get into their car and realize too late that you're going in circles on a road that good. You know, I always thought I was careful with online dating. I followed all the rules, the ones you read in articles and hear on true crime podcasts. Meet in public, tell a friend where you are going, trust your gut. I was meticulous, almost to a fault. But then I met Michael. Our first date was magical. That is the only word for it. He was everything his profile promised, and more. Charming, witty, intelligent. We connected instantly, talking for hours about shared interests, laughing so easily. It felt like I would known him forever. The restaurant was bustling, but it was like we were in our own little bubble, a hopeful glow surrounding us. I truly believed I would finally found someone special, someone real. When the night wound down and he offered me a ride home, my usual caution, that ironclad rule book, it just melted away. He seemed so genuine, so good. His smile was warm, his eyes kind. I remember thinking, this is it. This is what I have been waiting for. I accepted a decision that would haunt every waking moment, every nightmare for the rest of my life. I walked with him to his car, a dark sedan, nondescript, but clean. He opened the passenger door for me, a gentlemanly gesture that, in hindsight, felt like the opening of a cage. As I settled into the seat, the leather cooled beneath me. A faint, metallic smell tickled the back of my throat. I dismissed it. Maybe he had been to a butcher shop earlier, or had a dog that got sick. My mind, already softened by the evening's enchantment, was eager to find an innocent explanation. But then, as he started the engine and the dim interior lights flickered on, my gaze drifted to the back seat, and that is when I saw it. A dark, irregular stain on the light gray upholstery. Not just one, but several, mottled and dried, like old coffee spills. Except they were not coffee. Even in the poor light, my stomach clenched. It was too dark, too deep a hue, and the metallic tang in the air suddenly intensified, no longer faint. It was blood. My breath hitched. My heart gave a single, hard thump against my ribs. Blood. My internal alarm bells, previously silenced by Michael's charm, began to clang, faint at first, like distant church bells. But then I saw more. A dark smear on the door handle, almost black in the gloom, and a faint, almost invisible trace along the edge of the seatbelt buckle. I felt a cold dread begin to seep into my bones. My eyes flickered to Michael. He was humming a soft tune, his hands casually on the wheel, pulling out of the parking lot. His profile was illuminated by the streetlights, still handsome, still seemingly innocent. My mind, in a desperate attempt to cling to the beautiful illusion of the date, started rationalizing again. No, it can't be. It is probably just paint. Or maybe he helped someone after an accident. He seems so nice. I am overreacting. That is the insidious thing about fear, is not it? When it first knocks, you try to convince yourself it is just the wind. But the cold dread was growing, blossoming in my chest. I wanted to say something, to ask, to confront him. But the words caught in my throat. What would I even say? Hey, Michael, is that blood in your backseat? How insane would that sound? And what if it was innocent? I would seem paranoid, ungrateful. The fear of being rude, of ruining the perfect end to a perfect date, was almost as strong as the burgeoning fear for my safety. Almost. We drove for a few minutes in silence, the radio playing some soft rock. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, at the dark stains, then back at Michael. He seemed oblivious, occasionally glancing at me with that warm, reassuring smile. But now, it did not feel reassuring. It felt practice. A mask. Then I noticed we were taking an unusual route. Not the quick way to my apartment, which I had given him earlier. We were turning down unfamiliar streets, darker, less populated. My unease, which had been simmering, began to boil. I tried to sound casual. Oh, Michael, are we going a different way? My place is usually just straight down Elm Street from here. He chuckled, a low, pleasant sound that did nothing to soothe the rising panic. Just taking a scenic route, love. Thought you might enjoy the quiet. Less traffic this way. Less traffic. The words echoed in my head, cold and hollow. My eyes darted around. The streets were quiet. Too quiet. The houses were becoming sparse. The streetlights fewer and farther between. And then I realized it. We were not just taking an unusual route. He was circling. The same dark, desolate streets. I recognized a particular bent streetlight, a boarded-up house. We had passed them before. The alarm bells in my head were no longer distant. They were deafening. The bloodstains in the back seat, the metallic smell, circuitous route, the growing isolation. It all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. My breath became shallow, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it came out as a desperate squeak. Michael, I really need to get home. It is getting late. His warm smile, the one that had charmed me just an hour ago, vanished. It did not just fade, it snapped off, replaced by a cold, empty stare that made my blood run even colder. His eyes, which had seemed so kind, were now devoid of all warmth, flat and predatory. It was like looking into the eyes of a shark. The mask had fallen. Without a word, his right hand darted to the central console. I heard the soft, sickening click of the automatic locks engaging. My stomach dropped. Then, with a speed that startled me, he snatched my phone from the cup holder where I had carelessly placed it. He did not even look at me. His gaze was fixed on the road, his jaw set. "We are almost there," he said, his voice now a low, guttural rumble, utterly devoid of the charm it had held all evening. It was the voice of a stranger, a monster. Panic, pure and unadulterated, seized me. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a wrong turn. This was real. The blood in the back seat, the circling, the locked doors, the stolen phone. I was trapped. He drove us deeper into the dark, isolated woods. The road became a gravel track, then just a rutted path, barely wide enough for the car. Trees pressing on both sides, their branches gnarled and skeletal against the moonless sky. The only sound was the crunch of tires on gravel and the frantic pounding of my own heart. I gripped the door handle, but it was useless. Locked. I tried the window, but it would not budge. My mind raced, desperate, clawing for an escape plan. There was no one around. No houses, no lights, just the oppressive darkness of the forest. Finally, he pulled up to a dilapidated cabin, barely visible through the dense foliage. It looked abandoned, decrepit, like something out of a horror movie. A shiver of pure terror ran through me. This was it. This was where I died. He cut the engine. The sudden silence was deafening, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the frantic drumming of my pulse in my ears. He turned to me, his cold eyes gleaming in the faint ambient light. "Get out," he commanded, his voice flat, emotionless. Pure survival instinct kicked in. There was no way I was getting out of that car willingly. I knew, with absolute certainty, that if I stepped out, I would never step back in. This was my only chance. My mind, previously paralyzed by fear, suddenly became hyper-focused. I saw his face, his proximity. I saw the console between us. I saw the driver's door handle. With a primal scream that was choked off by my own terror, I lunged. I did not think, I just reacted. My nails, short but sharp, raked across his face. He let out a surprised roar of pain and anger, recoiling instinctively, bringing a hand up to his cheek. That split-second distraction was all I needed. I scrambled over the console, a blur of motion fueled by adrenaline. My body protested, twisting painfully, but I ignored it. My hand fumbled, blindly searching for the driver's door handle. My fingers closed around it, cold metal against my clammy skin. I pushed down, praying it would unlock, that he had not locked aside too. Click. It opened. I did not hesitate. I threw myself out, hitting the ground hard. The impact knocked the wind out of me, scraping my knees and hands on the rough gravel, but I barely registered pain. My only thought was to run. I scrambled to my feet, my legs wobbly, and bolted into the dense woods. Michael's enraged roars echoed behind me, a chilling sound that spurred me faster. He was out of the car. I could hear his heavy footsteps crashing through the undergrowth, gaining on me. Branches whipped at my face, leaves rustled underfoot. The rough bark of trees scraped my arms as I ran blindly through the absolute darkness. My lungs burned, my throat was raw, but I could not stop. I could not look back. The image of his cold, empty stare was burned into my mind, propelling me forward. Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath me. I tumbled down an embankment, a steep, muddy slope, rolling head over heels, twigs and rocks digging into my skin. I landed in a heap at the bottom, winded and disoriented, my body aching from fall. But the fall had bought me a second. I could hear Michael's heavy breathing, his frustrated curses, as he searched at the top of the embankment. I knew he was close. Too close. My eyes darted around in the blackness. I saw a thick patch of mud, half hidden by some low-hanging bushes. Without thinking, I crawled into it, burying myself as best I could. The cold, slimy mud seeped into my clothes, clinging to my skin, but I did not care. I pressed myself flat against the earth, holding my breath, trying to make myself as small and invisible as possible. His footsteps grew louder, closer. I could hear him crashing through the bushes at the top of the embankment, then starting to descend, slowly, carefully. My heart pounded so hard, I thought he must surely hear it. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying, bargaining with a God I had not thought of in years. Then, a blinding beam of light cut through the darkness. His flashlight, it swept across the ground, inches from my face. I could hear his ragged breathing, his curses under his breath. He was so close. I could almost feel the heat of his body. I held my breath until my lungs burned, until black spots danced before my eyes. Every muscle in my body was screaming to move, to run, to scream, but I forced myself to remain utterly still, a statue of terror. The beam lingered, sweeping back and forth. I could feel the mud caked on my face, probably smeared with blood from my scrapes, but I did not dare move a muscle to wipe it away. He was looking right at me, or rather, right over me. The beam swept inches from my face, illuminating the mud-caked leaves, the gnarled roots, everything but my terrified, mud-covered form. He grunted in frustration. "Damn it! Where are you?" His voice was laced with chilling fury. The flashlight beam moved on, sweeping to my left, then further into the woods. He was moving in the wrong direction. Slowly, painstakingly, he moved away, his footsteps fading into the distance. I heard his shouts, his angry calls, growing fainter and fainter. I stayed there, buried in the mud, for what felt like an eternity. My body trembled uncontrollably, a violent shiver that would not stop. The cold, the terror, the sheer exhaustion. I waited until the last sound of his movements had vanished, until the silence of the woods returned, broken only by the chirping crickets and the distant hoot of an owl. Slowly, carefully, I pushed myself out of the mud. My limbs ached, my clothes were soaked and heavy, my skin was crawling. I was covered in scratches, bruises, and mud, but I was alive. I stumbled through the darkness, moving in the opposite direction from where I would last heard Michael. Every shadow seemed to hide him. Every rustle of leaves made me jump. I pushed through thickets, tripped over roots, my bare hands tearing as I clawed my way through the dense undergrowth. My sense of direction was gone, replaced by a desperate need to just move. Then, through a break in the trees, I saw it, a faint distant glow, a streetlight. Hope, raw and fragile, flickered within me. I pushed harder, ignoring the pain, ignoring the exhaustion. The glow grew brighter, more defined. It was a gas station, a beacon of safety in the suffocating darkness. I burst inside, sobbing, my body shaking uncontrollably. The fluorescent lights of the convenience store were blinding, but I did not care. The young attendant behind the counter, a teenager with wide, startled eyes, stared at my mud-caked, blood-streaked form. "Please." I choked out, my voice raw and hoarse. "Help me." He tried to kill me. The attendant, bless his heart, did not hesitate. He saw the genuine terror in my eyes, the desperation. He immediately called the police, his voice calm despite the shock. The police arrived quickly. I was a mess, incoherent at first, but they were patient. They listened as I recounted the horrifying details, the charming date, the ride home, the bloodstains, the circling car, Michael's chilling transformation, the locked doors, the desperate escape, the chase, the hiding in the mud. They confirmed my worst fears. Michael was a predator, a monster who used fake identities, a meticulously crafted facade to lure unsuspecting women. They had been looking for him. He was a ghost, leaving no trace, vanishing after each incident. They found his car, abandoned a few miles from the cabin. The back seat still stained with the dark, unspeakable evidence of his cruelty. But Michael himself was gone, vanished into night, a phantom. They never caught him. The memory of that night, the circling car, his chilling eyes, the desperate scramble for survival, it never leaves me. It is etched into my very being, a permanent scar on my soul. I still jump at shadows, flinch at sudden movements. Every kind stranger, every charming smile, is now viewed with a deep-seated suspicion. I see the darkness behind the mask, the monster lurking beneath the surface. I survived. I escaped. But part of me, the hopeful, trusting part, died in that dark, isolated woods. And sometimes in the dead of night, when the silence is too loud, I can still hear his enraged roars, still feel the cold, slimy mud, and I know with chilling certainty that he is still out there, waiting, and that more than anything is the true horror. Hey guys, so I got a story for you today that, honestly, still makes the hair on my arm stand up. It happened a few years back, and even now, just thinking about it, I get this cold knot in my stomach. It is one of those situations where you think, this only happens in movies, until it happens to you. And let me tell you, when it does, it changes you. You start looking at people differently, at places differently. You start wondering if maybe, just maybe, some doors are better left unopened and some invitations are better left declined. This all started, like so many modern horror stories do, with a dating app. I was in my late 20s, working a pretty standard 9 to 5, and frankly, a little tired of the bar scene. Swiping seemed like a logical step. I would have my fair share of awkward coffee dates and conversations that went nowhere, but I was still optimistic, always looking for that connection. Then I matched with Sylvia. Her profile picture was a little blurry, almost artistic, like she would taken herself in soft, natural light. She had these striking, dark eyes, and a smile that hinted at something deeper, something a little mysterious. Her bio was short, just a few lines about loving old books, jazz, and quiet evenings. Nothing screamed serial killer or anything, just intriguing. We started chatting, and she was quick-witted, intelligent, and did not play games. That was a breath of fresh air. After a few days of back and forth, we decided to meet up for drinks. I picked a fairly busy, well-lit pub downtown, just to be safe. You can never be too careful, right? When she walked in, she was even more striking than her photos. Tall, slender, with long, dark hair that fell past her shoulders. She wore a simple black dress, but she carried herself with this elegance, I guess you could call it, almost like she was from a different era. We talked for hours. She was fascinating, telling stories about her travels, her passion for obscure literature, her work as an archivist at a local historical society. I found myself completely engrossed. She asked me a lot of questions too, not in an intrusive way, but genuinely curious. She listened, really listened, which is a rare quality these days. There were a couple of tiny things that, in hindsight, were red flags waving in a hurricane, but at the time, I brushed them off. Like, she never really laughed out loud, just a soft, almost silent chuckle. And her eyes, those dark, beautiful eyes, sometimes seemed to hold a faraway look, like she was seeing something I could not. But again, I just thought, oh, she is deep. She is thoughtful. I was clearly an idiot. After our second drink, the pub started to get really loud, and she leaned in, her voice a soft murmur. "My place is not far from here," she said. "I have some fantastic single malt and a much quieter atmosphere. Now, normally, I am pretty cautious about going home with someone on a first date, but I felt a connection with Sylvia, a genuine spark. And honestly, I was a little buzzed, feeling good, and she just had this aura about her that made me trust her. So, against my better judgment, I said yes. Her apartment building was old brick, nestled on a quiet side street a few blocks from the pub. It looked like it had seen better days, but it had a certain charm. The lobby was dimly lit, smelling faintly of dust and old wood. We took a creaky old elevator up to the 5th floor. when she opened the door to her apartment. I was immediately struck by the contrast. From the outside, the building seemed almost derelict, but her place was pristine, almost too pristine. It was sparsely furnished, but there was expensive looking a sleek leather sofa, a glass coffee table, a minimalist bookshelf filled with uniformly bound books. No clutter, no personal photos, no knickknacks. It felt less like a home and more like a showroom. The air was cool, dry, and had a faint, almost metallic scent, which I again dismissed as old building smell. "Make yourself comfortable," she said, gesturing to the sofa. "I will get those drinks." I sat down, feeling a little out of place in such a meticulously organized space. I looked around. The walls were painted a stark, almost clinical white. There was a large window overlooking the street, but it was covered by thick, dark curtains that blocked out almost all the city light. I noticed a peculiar detail, the door we would just come through. It was an old, heavy wooden door, but it had been reinforced with a thick steel plate on the inside, painted white to match the wall. And it did not just have a deadbolt, it had what looked like 3 separate locks, all heavy-duty, industrial grade. I remember thinking, wow, she must be really paranoid about security. Or maybe this is a really nice apartment. She is protecting her investments. Sylvia returned with 2 crystal glasses, each containing a generous pour of amber liquid. "Lagavulin," she said, handing me one. My favorite. I took a sip. It was smooth, smoky, and strong. We talked for a while longer, the conversation flowing easily. She was still captivating, but as the alcohol warmed me, I started to notice the quiet. It was an absolute, suffocating quiet. No street noise, no sounds from neighboring apartments, nothing. It was like we were in a bubble. I tried to make a joke about it. "Your neighbors must be incredibly quiet," I said, "or maybe you are just really good at soundproofing." She smiled, a small, knowing smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Something like that," she replied. I checked my phone, just a casual glance at the time. No service. My heart did a tiny little skip. "Huh," I said, "no signal in here." "Oh, yes," she said, "it is an old building. The walls are thick. I usually just use the landline." She gestured vaguely towards a small, antique-looking telephone on a side table. Another sip of the whiskey. It was good, but it was also potent. I started to feel a little lightheaded. More than I usually would from one drink. I chalked it up to being on an empty stomach and the strength of the scotch. I should probably head out soon, I said, trying to sound casual. Got an early start tomorrow. Sylvia nodded, her expression unreadable. "Of course," she said. "Let me just walk you to the door." I stood up, feeling a bit wobbly. The room seemed to spin for a second. As I walked toward the door, she moved ahead of me. She reached for the doorknob, but instead of turning it, she placed her hand flat against the steel plate. Then, with a click, a soft whirring sound came from within the door. My eyes widened. It was not just a deadbolt. It was an electronic locking system. She looked at me, her smile gone, replaced by that unreadable expression. "You know," she said, her voice a little lower, a little flatter than before, "I have been looking for someone like you for a very long time." My blood ran cold. The whiskey fog in my brain instantly cleared, replaced by a jolt of pure adrenaline. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but it came out as a pathetic croak. She did not answer. Instead, she turned, walked over to the small antique telephone, and picked up the receiver. She did not dial. She just held it to her ear, listening. Her eyes, those dark, beautiful eyes, were fixed on me. They were not seeing me anymore. They were seeing something else, something I could not comprehend. Panic, real, gut-wrenching panic, began to bubble up. I reached for the door handle. It was cold, metallic, and it would not budge. I tried to turn it, push it, pull it. Nothing. It was locked solid. I tried the deadbolts, but they were not mechanical. They were flush with the doorframe, clearly part of that electronic system. Sylvia, I said, my voice rising. What are you doing? Open the door. This is not funny. She slowly lowered the phone, her gaze still on me. Oh, it is not a joke. Mark, she said, her voice still flat, devoid of any warmth. It is never a joke. My mind raced. The thick curtains, the soundproofing, the lack of self-service, the industrial locks, the pristine, impersonal apartment. It all clicked into place, and the picture it painted was terrifying. I was not her date. I was something else. Let me out, I yelled, my voice cracking. I hammered on the door, a desperate, frantic rhythm against the unyielding steel. The sound was dull, absorbed by the thick walls. It was like hitting a padded cell. Sylvia watched me, unmoving. Her composure was unnerving. Do not bother, she said calmly. No one can hear you. I spun around, looking for another way out. The large window. I rushed to it, tearing at the heavy curtains. Behind them, there was not a normal window. There was a thick pane of reinforced glass, like something you'd see in a bank vault, and behind that, a heavy-duty steel mesh bolted directly into the wall. My heart pounded against my ribs. This was not an apartment, it was a cage. Why? I gasped, my throat tight with fear. Why are you doing this? She finally moved, walking slowly towards me. Her steps were silent on the polished wooden floor. Because, she said, stopping a few feet away, I need companionship. And people are so unreliable. They leave. They judge. They do not understand. I backed away from her, my eyes darted around the room, searching for anything, any weapon, any escape. The apartment, once sterile, now felt menacing, every clean line and empty space amplifying my terror. I won't leave. I stammered, trying to sound convincing, try to appeal to whatever shred of humanity might be left in her. Just let me go, and I swear, I won't tell anyone. I will just leave, and you will never see me again. She tilted her head, a small, almost childlike gesture. Oh, but you will leave. Mark. Eventually. Just like the others. The others. That phrase hit me like a physical blow. My stomach churned. The others. I whispered. She smiled then, a genuine smile, but it was twisted, chilling. Yes, they all try to leave. They all make promises. But I know better now. I have learned. She gestured around the room. This apartment, you see, it is perfect, soundproofed, secure. And I have made sure it has everything one could possibly need for a long stay. My gaze fell on the minimalist bookshelf. I would assume they were just decorative, uniformly bound classics. Now, I saw a small, almost imperceptible gap between two of the books. My eyes darted to it, then back to Sylvia. She was watching me, her smile widening. Go on, she prompted, take a look. You might find something interesting. My legs felt like lead, but some morbid curiosity, or perhaps a desperate hope for a clue, pulled me towards a bookshelf. I reached out, my fingers trembling, and pulled out one of the books. It was an old copy of Wuthering Heights, but it was not a book. It was a hollowed-out compartment. Inside, nestled on a velvet lining, were several laminated photographs. I picked one up. It was a man, mid-30s, smiling, looking happy. Underneath, a date arrived June 12th. I picked up another. A different man, older, with a different date. And another, a younger man. All of them smiling, looking happy, just like I had been when I walked into this apartment. And then at the bottom of the stack, a photo of a man, his face gaunt, eyes wide with terror, slumped against a wall. Underneath that, another date departed August 28th. My breath hitched, my vision blurred. These were not just photos. They were a terrifying chronological record. Sylvia was not looking for companionship. She was looking for specimens. And I was the latest. They all have their stages. Sylvia said, her voice a soft, almost lecturing tone, as if we were discussing a botanical collection. First denial, then anger, then despair, and finally acceptance. You are in the anger stage. Mark, it is quite typical. I dropped the photos, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I stumbled backward, away from the bookshelf, away from her. My mind screamed at me to run. But where? The apartment was a trap, a cage. I was locked in, with a smiling, serene psychopath. I looked at the high ceiling, the smooth, unblemished walls. There was nowhere to go. I was trapped. The metallic smell in the air suddenly seemed much more sinister. Was it simply old building smell, or something else? I remember the faint metallic smell in Michael's car in the recap, and a new wave of terror washed over me. This was different, but the intent felt similar. What do you want from me? I choked out, my voice raw. Just to be here, she said, her eyes softening, almost pleading. To share my life, to listen to my stories, to be mine. I felt a cold sweat break out all over my body. This was not just about being held captive, it was about being consumed. She wanted my presence, my attention, my very existence, locked away for her pleasure. I had to get out. I scanned the room again, desperately. There had to be something. A window, even with the bars, could be a possibility if I could break the glass. But that glass looked impenetrable. The door was a fortress. My eyes fell on the small antique landline phone. Can I use your phone? I asked, trying to sound reasonable. I just need to call my boss. Tell him I won't be in tomorrow. Sylvia's smile vanished. Her eyes narrowed. No, she said, her voice firm. The outside world is no longer your concern. I knew then that there was no reasoning with her. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate, calculated act. I was her prisoner. I started to pace, my heart still hammering. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow, seemed to mock my helplessness. The silence was the worst part. It pressed on me, making me feel utterly alone, utterly isolated. I tried my phone again, just in case. Still nothing. A dead zone. I remembered the heavy whiskey she would given me. Had it been drugged? It certainly felt like it had a stronger effect than normal. That is why I felt so disoriented when I tried to leave. She must have planned this every step of the way. I walked into what I assumed was the kitchen. It was as sterile as the living room. Stainless steel appliances, gleaming countertops. A small built-in pantry. I opened it, hoping to find a window, a back door, anything. It was just filled with canned goods, neatly stacked, and some non-perishable items. No escape route. I tried the bathroom next. Another small room, impeccably clean. Al mirror, al toilet, al shower. No windows. The shower curtain was drawn. I pulled it back, almost expecting to find another person or something grotesque. But it was just a plain white tiled shower. I went back into the living room, my mind racing, trying to formulate a plan. I needed a weapon, or at least something to make noise, to break something. The glass coffee table. Too heavy. The books. Useless. Sylvia was still standing where I would left her, watching me with that serene, unblinking gaze. Her stillness was more terrifying than any overt threat. It was the stillness of a predator, waiting for its prey to tire itself out. You are getting agitated, she observed, as if commenting on the weather. It is normal, but it won't help you. I suddenly felt a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. You are insane. I yelled, my voice hoarse. You can't just keep people locked up. This is kidnapping. You will go to jail. She simply shook her head. No, Mark. I won't. I am very careful. And besides, I have all the time in the world. She gestured to a small, almost invisible security camera tucked into the corner of the ceiling. I have everything I need right here. My blood ran cold again. A camera. She was watching me. She was always watching me. The realization that I had no privacy, that every desperate attempt, every moment of fear, was being recorded, added another layer of horror. I felt a sudden urge to smash something, anything, to break the pristine silence, to shatter her composure. I looked around wildly. My eyes landed on a heavy, antique looking bronze statue on a pedestal in the corner. It looked like it weighed a ton. You know, Sylvia said, her voice cutting through my thoughts. The last one tried to break the window with that. It did not work. He just ended up hurting himself. My heart sank. She knew my thoughts. She had seen it all before. This was not her first rodeo. This was not even her second. The photos, the others, they were all real. And they had all tried to escape. And they had all failed. I slumped onto the sofa, defeated. The initial adrenaline rush was fading, leaving me exhausted and terrified. I felt a profound sense of hopelessness wash over me. I was trapped, truly, irrevocably trapped. Sylvia walked over to the glass coffee table and picked up my phone. She looked at it for a moment, then walked over to a small, locked drawer in a side table. She opened it with a small key she pulled from her dress pocket and placed my phone inside. No distractions, she said, locking the drawer. Your focus should be entirely on our time together. I just stared at her, my mind numb with fear. She was so calm, so methodical. This was not a Spiro Themin decision. This was her routine. I have prepared a room for you, she said, her voice almost gentle now. It is quite comfortable. You will find everything you need there. She gestured to a door I had not noticed before, subtly blended into the white wall, almost invisible. I did not move. I could not. My body felt heavy, paralyzed by fear. Come along, she urged, a hint of impatience in her tone. There is no need to make this difficult. We have so much time ahead of us. I slowly pushed myself up from the sofa. My legs were still wobbly. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to fight, to run, to do anything but follow her. But the sheer futility of it, the knowledge that she had planned for every contingency, that she had done this before, held me in its grip. She led me to the hidden door. It opened silently, revealing a small, stark bedroom. A single bed, a nightstand, a small closet. No windows, just like the rest of the apartment. It was meticulously clean, almost sterile. On the nightstand, there was a small stack of books. Old, classic novels, just like the ones in the living room. And on top of the books, a small, framed photo. I walked closer, my heart pounding with dread. It was a photo of a man. His face was pale, his eyes hollow, but he was smiling a forced, empty smile. Beneath the photo, a small plaque read, "My dear Edward, July 14th, October 3rd. Edward, one of the others, his departure date." My stomach lurched. This was not just a collection of photos, it was a shrine. And I was about to become part of it. My arrival date would be recorded, and eventually, my departure. I turned to Sylvia, my eyes wide with unspeakable horror. You killed them." I whispered, the words barely audible. She smiled that serene, chilling smile. "No," she said, her voice soft, almost wounded. "I did not kill them. They simply left. When they stopped appreciating my company. When they stopped being responsive." She paused, her gaze lingering on the photo of Edward. "It is a shame, really. Some of them were quite charming at first. Just like you. Mark." The implication hung in the air, cold and deadly. She was not going to kill me outright. She was going to break me. She was going to keep me here, isolated, observed, until I withered away, until I became as hollow and empty as Edward in the photo. Until I stopped being responsive, I stumbled into the room, my legs giving out, and collapsed onto the bed. The mattress was firm, unforgiving. I looked at the door, at Sylvia standing there, her face a mask of serene expectation. She was not just a kidnapper, she was a collector of broken souls, and I was her newest acquisition. She closed the door behind her with a soft click, plunging the room into near darkness. I heard the faint whirring of the electronic locks engaging once more. I was alone, truly alone, in a soundproof tomb with no cell service, no windows, and no hope. The metallic smell, I realized with a fresh wave of nausea, was not just the old building. It was a scent of fear, of desperation, of the metallic tang of blood that had surely been spilled within these walls before. It was the scent of a cage, and I was inside it. I lay there in the darkness, listening to the suffocating silence, the only sound the frantic thumping of my own heart. I was locked in Sylvia's apartment, and I knew, with a horrifying certainty, that getting out would be the hardest, most terrifying fight of my life. And I was not even sure I had a fighting chance. My mind replayed her words. They all try to leave. They all make promises. But I know better now. I have learned. And then the chilling image of Edward's vacant eyes, his forced smile, burned into my memory. This was just the beginning of my nightmare, and I had no idea how it would end.